Chapter 378. When he entered the door, he carefully observed Professor Shu's large study room. The walls were full of bookshelves, and the bookshelves were all full of journals. Thinking about the old woman's age, Chen Guang respected this scholar from the bottom of his heart. The more respect he had, the more ashamed he would be if he caused trouble for others. He even regretted that when he hit Wang Ren, he only thought that he was fearless, but he didn't consider that it would involve so many people, and it would affect the research that the old woman had invested her entire life into. If he had known it would be like this, he would have considered it more. Of course, the most unobtainable thing in this world was knowing it earlier. Unexpectedly, the old woman didn't scold him, but instead laughed. "Good hit. I've wanted to hit that grandson for a long time, but I'm too old to hit him. You don't know how angry those retired old guys from the School of Chemical Engineering were. Last month, old Jiang came out of Su Lijing's office for less than 3 days, and he died from anger." Chen Guang and Zhuo Jingxi were shocked. So there was such a thing. The School of Chemical Engineering that accepted Wang Ren was obviously not a monolithic block. There were still some people who understood, but unfortunately, those people were retired. They tried to resist but failed, and they angered an old professor to death. "Little Zhuo, you are a talent. This time, it is a setback for you, but it is not all bad. You don't have to worry about showing your face at the company. I've contacted an old classmate overseas. With your current level, you can also enter his son's laboratory in California. My old classmate's son is also quite outstanding. He's a foreign academic leader, before he's even 50 years old. He has real skills. You should take advantage of these 2 years to further your studies. Foreign countries are ahead of us in the field of photocatalysts. You should go there and learn." After Professor Shu calmed down, she said so. It turned out that she had already found a way out for Zhuo Jingxi. "It's a pity that you didn't pass the exam normally. You can't get a degree there, and you still have to come back to get your doctorate. But it doesn't matter. Even if I'm not here at that time, I've already talked to little Han. He can take over my class and finish your doctorate," Professor Shu said with waning interest. Zhuo Jingxi immediately burst into tears. Old Madame Shu's words were spoken lightly, but there was a hint of disheartened coldness in her words. The old woman was really hurt. "Silly child, don't cry. This setback is nothing. I'm old. If I were young, I wouldn't care about Su Lijing or Wang Ren. I would protect you even if I had to die. But now, I really couldn't hold on any longer. This also reminded me that it was time to consider letting go. It's just a little regretful that before I die, I couldn't really come up with anything. After I die, people will definitely criticize me. Old Lady Shu wasted a lot of the country's money, but she didn't even get any results. Time waits for no one." As Old Lady Shu spoke, her voice started to choke. "But it's not your fault, little Zhuo. It's really not your fault. You've already done very well. It's just that you were born 10 years too late. If you and I had fought together 10 years earlier, we would have produced something by now. But it doesn't matter. The happiest thing is that I can take you with me for a period of time in these few years. When you return to China, it doesn't matter if you don't come back. In any case, you have to go further than me." Zhuo Jingxi burst into tears. The 2 women, one old and one young, hugged each other and cried bitterly in the study. Perhaps Wang Ren's matter was just the fuse. What really made old Shu sad was that she felt old. For a person who had been studying for his entire life, the saddest thing was not losing to knowledge but to time. He clearly knew that if he persisted on this path, he would get results sooner or later, but he couldn't live to see that day. How sad it was. Chen Guang could also see that the old woman was really overworked and overworked her brain. She looked like she was in her 70s, but she looked like she was in her 90s. In the time it took to say a few more words, her breathing had become rapid. Perhaps she really didn't have many years left. The room was filled with a sorrowful atmosphere. Chen Guang silently turned his face away. He also felt his eyes moisten. After a long time, the 2 of them finally calmed down. Zhuo Jingxi's panic from having to leave the laboratory gradually dissipated. Old Shu turned her gaze to Chen Guang again. "Young man, don't blame yourself. Actually, we all hope that someone will really stand up and kick that bastard surnamed Wang out of the school. If this time, because of you, Su Lijing can understand that he should send Wang Ren somewhere else, and not let him cause trouble in the school, then you'll really have done a great service. The school is full of honest people who study, and all of them have been trampled on by Wang Ren. Every day, there's someone shitting on your head. How can you study? Evil people should be tortured by evil people. When old Shu said this, Chen Guang also laughed. Ancestor grandmother really knows how to ease people's minds. I'm already regretting that I didn't hit him hard enough. Don't worry, I Chen Guang swear here today that even if I'm expelled later, if that surnamed Wang still hangs around in the school, I'll specially beat him up. I'll beat him up until he doesn't dare to appear within 10 miles of the school. Old Shu's eyes lit up. Aren't you afraid that Su Lijing will find trouble with you? Chen Guang curled his lips. I'm not afraid. Isn't he just a vice principal? Can he eat me up? Young man, do you have other ideas? Old Shu was a learned person for decades. Perhaps she didn't know much about business, but she had a keen eye for people. She could see through Chen Guang's other plans at a glance. Chen Guang didn't hide it from her. Yes, if we can send him to jail, that would be even better. Old Shu clapped her hands excitedly. Although I'm not very optimistic about you, I support you. When you go back, look for little Han. He's the vice principal of your school. He has some things that might be helpful to you, but you have to do it discreetly. Although little Han is also involved in administration, he's also a learned person. Don't drag him into this. Chen Guang nodded. I understand. When the two left old Shu's house, their moods were much better. Zhuo Jingxi was still a little choked up. She was just sad about old Shu's old age. But humans were like this. Birth, old age, sickness, and death were the natural cycle of reincarnation. Sickness could be cured, but aging was unstoppable. Teacher has placed all her hopes on me. Zhuo Jingxi leaned on the E400L passenger seat and sighed. So Teacher Zhuo, you have to pull yourself together. It's about learning. It doesn't matter where you do it. Studying abroad isn't bad either. Chen Guang, on the other hand, was delighted. Zhuo Jingxi wanted to say something but stopped. Chen Guang guessed what she was thinking. Well, it doesn't matter if you admit it or not. Anyway, you're my little mistress now. I know this kind of private study that isn't funded by the government must be very expensive. But don't worry. I can still handle this small amount of money. Zhuo Jingxi shook her head fiercely. How can I let you pay for this? No way. That's how you rejected me when I bought you a car. Give up struggling. After the first time, you won't be able to resist the second and third time. Otherwise, how are you going to study abroad? I heard that living expenses in America cost thousands of dollars a month. When you have a foothold abroad, the laboratory will have to pay you, right? When the time comes, if you really can't get over it, then you can pay me back. Zhuo Jingxi's face froze. She couldn't refute. At this moment, the two of them still didn't know that Su Lijing's counterattack was not over. Vice Principal Su had indeed reached a compromise with Wu Shan, but this compromise was only limited to Chen Guang. Official Su's anger couldn't burn Chen Guang, but it had to be vented. The more he compromised with Chen Guang, the more it would burn with others. Zhuo Jingxi had old Shu to protect her, so she could barely stay in school. The ones who were really hurt were Hua Ling, Ding Lu's former roommate, Zhong Yu, and even Luo Jin. Chapter 379. By the time the two saw Hua Ling at the bottom of the administration building, the northeastern girl had already calmed down. While Zhuo Jingxi, Chen Guang, and Mrs. Shu were chatting, Hua Ling was met by the leaders of Gokyo University's graduate program. Her punishment was simple and straightforward. She was dismissed. Wang Run was still lying in the hospital, and it was unknown if he had woken up. However, the graduate program's quick response was definitely Su Lijing's decision. Hua Ling looked at the two of them and was unusually calm. She said cheerfully, Actually, I should have gone back to my hometown when I graduated last year. It doesn't matter now. I feel like I'm not as talented as Teacher Zhuo when it comes to academics. I might as well go back to my hometown and take the civil service exam. Or maybe I could get a job at a monitoring station. It could be said that she was forcing herself to smile or being open-minded, but after experiencing this incident, Hua Ling was exceptionally calm. Zhuo Jingxi wanted to persuade her and express her indignation, but when she saw the punishment notice in Hua Ling's hand, she didn't know what to say. Chen Guang's brows were tightly furrowed. Su Lijing's counterattack had come too quickly and too fiercely. He didn't ask about right or wrong, didn't care about the reason, and didn't care about how it happened. He just used the excuse of beating up and provoking the school's leaders to expel Hua Ling. Everyone knew that the real culprit was Chen Guang, but they could still persuade Hua Ling to leave. Su Lijing had the right to do so, and he found a barely passable reason. It was hard to believe that this was indeed a place for academics. After a while, Zhong Yu also walked out of the administrative building. She was also holding a piece of paper in her hand. She looked like she was in a dilemma. Before the gloomy Chen Guang could ask anything, Zhong Yu smiled and said, "It doesn't matter if I get a major demerit or probation." Fuck. Chen Guang couldn't help cursing as he continued. Is that Su Lijing a madman? Is he going to wipe out the entire project team? I don't know if he's going to wipe them out, but Hua Ling, Chen Guang, why am I so unlucky to meet the two of you? At this time, Luo Jin also walked down from the administrative building. Obviously he was not spared. Seeing that everyone had turned to look at him, Luo Jin's handsome face darkened. He stared at Chen Guang and said, "Are you satisfied now? Happy now? Would he be satisfied just because he had a big fist? Look at us now. Teacher Zhua has been sent out. Hua Ling has been expelled. Zhong Yu has been put on probation. And I've been given demerits. It's all your fault." If Chen Guang had really been fired, he might have been able to refute Luo Jin. However, the current situation was that nothing had happened to Chen Guang. It was the others who were unlucky. This made Chen Guang really speechless. Unexpectedly, Zhuo Jingxi, Hua Ling, and Zhong Yu shouted in unison, "Shut up." Then the three of them said in a different order, "I don't care." As soon as they finished speaking, the three of them realized that the other two had the same idea as them. They couldn't help but laugh out loud. Luo Jin stood there dumbfounded. He really couldn't understand why Chen Guang had been here for a few days, but he had become the outsider of the research team. Such a big thing happened, and you guys don't blame Chen Guang at all? He looked at Zhuo Jingxi with some pain. No matter what, the research team was gone. He really couldn't find a reason to continue staying by Zhuo Jingxi's side. He still had a lot of ways to retreat. He didn't have the determination or courage to follow Zhuo Jingxi to the company to waste time. He felt that he was a talented researcher. Although he really liked Zhuo Jingxi, he couldn't throw his life away. One day, when he became a big shot in academia, he could help her. She would definitely be touched, right? Teacher Zhuo. Luo Jin still wanted to say something. Zhuo Jingxi waved her hand disinterestedly. She could see that Chen Guang's expression was a little sad. For the first time, she felt annoyed with Luo Jin, this useful research dog. Luo Jin, go. A demerit isn't a punishment that can't be removed. You don't have to care too much about it. Don't call me teacher. I won't bring the lab anymore. After she finished speaking, she pulled Chen Guang away. Hua Ling and Zhong Yu followed, leaving Luo Jin alone. Luo Jin was at a loss. He just wanted to criticize Chen Guang. He thought that the others would share the same hatred as him. He didn't expect to be pushed out of the small group. Did I do something wrong? Wasn't it Chen Guang's impulsiveness that caused us all to be unlucky? It was really difficult for a person with an EQ like him to understand this problem. It was hard to say for others, but Hua Ling's expulsion really couldn't be blamed on Chen Guang. She was the first person to rush over. Hua Ling's fate was sealed even without Chen Guang beating up Wang Ren. On the other hand, Chen Guang felt indignant in his heart. He was even willing to be fired. Perhaps he wouldn't feel so unhappy in his heart. He was the one who made a move, but someone else had to bear the consequences. On the contrary, it was worse than a knife cutting into his body. I'm the one who has nothing to fear. You can't hurt me, but you hurt others? The punishment had been decided. Unless Su Lijing changed his mind, no one could change the result. Zhuo Jingxi and Zhong Yu were comforting Hua Ling in the hot pot restaurant. Hua Ling casually said that it wasn't a big deal. In fact, she had long wanted to go back and take the civil servant exam. Chen Guang, on the other hand, made a call to Wu Shan from outside the restaurant. Although Chen Guang did not meet with Wu Shan many times, He had a pretty good impression of this uncle of his. Hence, Chen Guang intended to plead with Wu Shan. After all, he had saved Wu Tong's life, so Wu Shan should give him face and negotiate with Su Lijing, right? On the other end of the line, Wu Shan seemed a little tired. He didn't even need Chen Guang to say it out loud. He already knew why Chen Guang was calling. Chen Guang, you're calling to ask about Su Lijing, aren't you? Don't worry, I've talked to him, and he won't pursue the matter. I have to say you're really ruthless, beating up that cheap nephew of his. I'm afraid he won't be able to leave the hospital for at least half a month. I heard that his nose is comminuted. He called Chen Guang, not little Chen, to show that they were close. Chen Guang nodded and said, "Thank you, Uncle Wu." Wu Shan adjusted his state of mind and laughed heartily. "There's no need to thank me. I owe you the life of my daughter. So it's what I should do." Hearing Wu Shan's hearty voice, the haze in Chen Guang's heart dissipated a little. He swallowed his saliva and said tentatively, "Uncle Wu, there are still some things that happened. I wasn't affected, but my classmates, my teacher." Wu Shan was silent for a while, obviously trying to organize his words. If someone like him had to organize his words, the matter was indeed not as simple as it seemed. After a long time, Wu Shan's voice came again. "I understand what you mean." As soon as he said this, Chen Guang's heart skipped a beat. What followed next was probably a but, right? "But I really tried my best in this matter. I can indeed negotiate with Su Lijing, and I can get him to make appropriate concessions, but there's a limit to the concessions. Do you understand what I mean?" As expected, the hope in Chen Guang's heart gradually dimmed. Chapter 380. On the other side, Wu Shan's straightforwardness disappeared as he paused briefly before he continued. "Wang Ren is Su Lijing's son, and Chen Guang is Wu Tong's benefactor. Our relationship is equal, and Wang Ren and Su Lijing's relationship is also equal. Su Lijing and I are also equal, but the others aren't. So it won't be easy for us to continue discussing this matter. Let's end this matter here. Although Su Lijing is protective of his children, he's still my elder. He's also a bit of a scholar, and won't go too far. But you can't block all the ways he can vent his anger, right? There are many paths in life. You should talk to your teacher and classmates, and resolve the conflict." "Okay, sorry to bother you." Since Wu Shan had already spoken, Chen Guang silently hung up the phone. He couldn't help. Chen Guang knew very well that Wu Shan really couldn't help. Or maybe he didn't know. Actually, that wasn't the case. When he talked to Wu Tong, he mentioned teacher Zhua and the others. Would Wu Tong not mention it to Wu Shan? Of course not. So Wu Shan didn't forget, but chose to ignore. Although Su Lijing didn't have any real power, he had a high status. Although his position was at the top, his connections were everywhere. Wu Shan was a young politician. Although he had a bright future, he didn't have enough experience. In addition, Wu Shan had his own difficulties when negotiating with Su Lijing. Su Lijing said that he was his nephew, but everyone knew that it was his son. Wu Shan wanted to speak up for Chen Guang, but because he had to avoid the broken world, he couldn't tell him how important Chen Guang was to him. So he could only say that he was Wu Tong's friend. The relationship between a son and a daughter wasn't equal, and Wu Shan only said those words to make Chen Guang feel better. In both Wu Shan's and Su Lijing's eyes, Su Lijing was open-minded and magnanimous. He made appropriate concessions, and even did Wu Shan a big favor. Chen Guang understood that if he asked Wu Shan to protect Zhuo Jingxi and the others, it would be a slap in Su Lijing's face. This favor was too big, and he might not be able to sell it. However, the matters of the world were not things that could be resolved just because one could understand reason. In Chen Guang's opinion, if he was in Wu Shan's shoes, he would definitely protect everyone without any hesitation. The reason was simple. Wang Ren deserved what he got, and his retribution was far from enough. How could Su Lijing be called a scholar? In order to protect his child, he had cut off Zhuo Jingxi's career as a researcher, expelled Hua Ling, put Zhong Yu on probation, and recorded a demerit on Luo Jin. All of this was revenge. There was nothing scholarly about him. Wasn't it said how many contributions one had made, how many books one had written, and how great one's reputation was? If one's conduct was already crooked, how could one talk about learning? Therefore, by protecting Zhuo Jingxi and the others, he was protecting justice and justice, not a favor. Of course, Chen Guang knew that this was just his opinion. Wu Tong had already said that Wu Shan was a politician, and a politician had to keep climbing up the ranks. He wouldn't easily make enemies, and every decision he made represented an exchange of benefits. Perhaps becoming enemies with Su Lijing, the elder he spoke of, might even affect his career as a politician. Therefore, he felt that he had done his best to protect himself. Su Lijing had already given in twice, so he couldn't be too aggressive anymore. Chen Guang clenched his phone tightly and sighed in his heart. As expected, I can't be a politician. But should I just accept this loss? Seeing that the three women had already started clinking glasses one after another, Chen Guang could see the disappointment hidden under the surface. Chen Guang clenched his fists tighter and tighter. I won't accept this. Since I can't count on Wu Shan, I have to use my own methods to solve the problem. In the past, he didn't really understand Wu Tong's attitude towards Wu Shan, and he always felt that it was wrong for her to treat her father like that. Now Chen Guang could more or less understand it. Having a politician as a family member was sometimes quite painful. But in his heart, Chen Guang didn't blame Wu Shan. As a politician, he had already done his best. At the end of the day, Chen Guang was still too weak, so he could only seek help from others when he encountered this kind of situation. For example, Ma Sunlin, who Zhu Jifa ran into when he was borrowing a loan, was also the same. If Lu Fei and the others hadn't come at the right time, Chen Guang would have been in endless trouble after he flipped out. If he had Wu Shan's status today, he wouldn't need to seek help from others. He would be able to stand on the opposite side of Su Lijing, confront him head-on, and negotiate with him. Relying on Wu Shan's protection, there was a layer of relationship between them. No matter how beautiful Wu Shan's words were, it was ultimately not his own business. Su Lijing would only give Wu Shan some face by letting one person go and killing the other four. If it was his own business, he could justifiably use 120% of his strength. Today's situation wouldn't be like this, and the other party would also think twice. With a layer of separation, if he could only use 70% of his strength, he could only protect himself. If he forced himself to use 120% of his strength, it would be as bad as not doing enough, and the conflict would intensify. As for how to strengthen himself, in short, the three worlds of politics, business, and academia had to occupy a position. Su Lijing's strength lay in the fact that he had spread his influence in the political world and dominated the academic world. Wu Shan's strength lay in the fact that he stood at a certain height in the political world at a young age. In the future, he would continue to rise, and his potential was astonishing. As for Chen Guang himself, other than the 170 million cash in his bank account, he had nothing. Having money didn't mean you had real social status. If the money was left to rot in the bank account, it wouldn't help to raise your social status. If you stood there, no matter how much money you had in your account, in the eyes of others, you would still be how you should be. However, if this 200 million was placed outside, or used as an investment, or to start one's own business, it could support tens or hundreds of people, provide tax revenue for the economy, or influence the lives of some people, then this money would truly represent one's social status, and one would have a foothold in the business world. If the current him was sitting on a business worth hundreds of millions, and he could talk to some of the higher-ups, he wouldn't need Wu Shan to step in. He could negotiate with Su Lijing himself. Even if he couldn't be on equal footing, he could at least make Su Lijing slightly apprehensive. This seemingly troublesome matter would become a problem that could be solved with a word or a meal. Deep in Chen Guang's heart, an emotion known as unwillingness gradually welled up. He had lived a muddle-headed life for 20 years and experienced many things. Ever since he obtained the heavenly Holy Grail, Chen Guang clearly didn't put much effort into it. He only did things that were within his power to do, and it seemed like everything had been smooth sailing for him until now. Until today, when he violently bumped into the huge mountain that was Su Lijing. Before they even met, he was already beaten up by Su Lijing's casual means. He finally vaguely understood the principle that he couldn't always be used to using other people's power and status as his backing. Wu Shan could scare off Wang Ren, and Duan Wen could intimidate Ma Sunlin. Although these things seemed so good, they were ultimately not his own strength. He needed to have his own strength. Chapter 381. I want to be the kind of person who can control the fate of others with a single word. I want to have the power to look up to heaven and earth, and not have to bow down to anyone. But that was a matter for the future. This time, since Wu Shan's face was no longer useful, and Chen Guang really did not want to bow down, he decided to simply smash his head against Su Lijing. Even if he had to bleed, he had to let Su Lijing know how powerful he was. When Chen Guang returned to the store, the three women were already drunk, and Hua Ling was narrating many things with tears in her eyes. At this moment, Chen Guang finally understood why she lost control of her emotions. He never thought that Ding Lu and Hua Ling were roommates. There were 4 girls in a dorm, and Ding Lu ended her fragile life hastily. The other 3 girls in the same dorm, on the other hand, received the recommendation for postgraduate studies in their second year, and never missed out on scholarships during their undergraduate years. The school was trying to cover up something with benefits, it was self-evident. Hua Ling and the other 2 girls spent 4 whole years on the road paved by Ding Lu's blood and life. He did not know how the other 2 girls were doing, but Hua Ling's heart had been in pain for 4 whole years. It was self-evident how depressed she was. No wonder she always said she didn't want to do postgraduate studies. If it was Chen Guang, he probably wouldn't even be able to stay there for a day. There are a lot of rumors about Xiao Lu, but I can tell you that only half of them are true. I've been hiding this in my heart for 4 years. I can't hold it in anymore. Many people think that Xiao Lu voluntarily slept in Wang Ren's bed. But let me tell you, one day, Xiao Lu told us that Wang Ren only asked her to go outside the school for a simple talk. But after she came back, she cried nonstop. I asked for a long time before I found out that she wasn't willing at all. She was drugged by Wang Ren. The school didn't allow us to say it, so they kept coaxing us. Su Lijing also knows about this. He knows who I am. If I didn't meet Teacher Zhua, I wouldn't even want to do postgraduate studies. I'm living in pain every day. Now that 4 years have passed, Su Lijing also knows that it's useless for us to say anything. They can expel me if they want to, I don't really care. But I just hate people like Wang Ren. Why doesn't anyone give him the retribution he deserves? Hua Ling gulped down a big mouthful of white wine, and almost coughed up blood. Before she collapsed, she slammed the table and said, "Zhongyu also slammed the table. Scum! Scum! Bastard!" Then Zhongyu also collapsed. Zhuo Jingxi drank a little less than the 2 girls, but she was also drunk. She first looked at Hua Ling and Zhongyu, and no one knew what she was thinking. Suddenly, she turned to look at Chen Guang, who was sitting next to her, and hugged him fiercely. Why is it so hard to be an innocent person? Then she began to bawl. She did not know how many times she had cried today. Zhuo Jingxi had never been such a weak woman. But this time, she was truly hurt by the cruelty of reality. Chen Guang didn't avoid her at all. He turned around and hugged her. After a long time he whispered in her ear, "Teacher Zhua, don't worry. I will give all of you an explanation. You won't leave the lab, and Hua Ling won't be fired. This is all I can do for now. But sooner or later, I will give all of you an explanation. Good and evil will be repaid." Chen Guang never made promises easily. Even if Zhuo Jingxi, who was already drunk, didn't remember what he said, he had to keep his promise since it came from his mouth. Stopping Zhuo Jingxi, who still wanted to pour herself more wine, Chen Guang sullenly drank a mouthful of wine. It was exceptionally bitter. Of the 4 people, 2 were so drunk that they fell asleep. Zhuo Jingxi was also so drunk that she couldn't walk properly. But at least she could still stand up straight. Chen Guang spent a lot of effort to hold Hua Ling and Zhongyu in each of his arms. Then, he let Zhuo Jingxi walk unsteadily in front. Under the envious and jealous gazes of many people, he finally sent Hua Ling and Zhongyu back to their dormitory. Seeing Zhongyu and Zhuo Jingxi go upstairs with the help of their roommates, Chen Guang let out a sigh of relief. The strange looks he received on the way back were really quite uncomfortable. Chen Guang's hard work for the day wasn't over yet. He still had to send Zhuo Jingxi home. Perhaps it was because of the cold wind blowing on her head on the way back. But Zhuo Jingxi was getting more and more drunk. She just waved her hand. I can't walk anymore. All right, let's carry her back. It's much easier to carry one person. Chen Guang, do you think people like Wang Ren should go to hell? Zhuo Jingxi mumbled as she lay on his back. Chen Guang nodded. Yes, they should go to hell. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard snoring behind him. Zhuo Jingxi had already fallen asleep. After arriving at her house, Chen Guang spent a lot of time to settle her down. She was so drunk, and he didn't dare to leave her alone at home. He went to the living room, turned on her computer, and started to work on his own matters. Chen Guang had a rough plan in his mind. If it worked, he really didn't need Wu Shan's help to tire Su Lijing out. Logging into Weibo, it had been a few days since he posted the Dota video of Windrunner. However, this time, he didn't let Jin Jiang and Zhongyu repost it. Although the two girls had the urge to do so, they held it in. With the same ID, the two girls reposted it once in a while. It could be explained that they were attracted by his video. But if this person reposted every single one of his posts, who knew how much gossip would come out of it? Chen Guang also told the two girls that with their help, he had already taken the first step on his road to being an internet celebrity, and that was enough. In the future, this ID might become more and more conspicuous, and there might even be more and more people trying to dig out the true identity of the almighty Superman. Therefore, it was best for the two of them to distance themselves from their relationship on Weibo and not get involved again. If they were asked in the future, they could at least lie to the media. The two girls faintly felt that it was a little funny. Only 1 million fans, far from being a real internet celebrity. However, the two of them didn't point out Chen Guang's arrogance, and only said, "As long as you're happy." In the end, the game was still limited by the rules of the game itself. No matter how eye-catching the maneuvers were, it was difficult for people to see how much was beyond the limits of human beings. Moreover, the audience of the Dota video wasn't wide, so this video didn't cause much of a stir on the internet. It only circulated among the Dota players for a while. After all, this was the first person's view of the only godly player in the national server so far. In half a month, the Weibo fans of this almighty Superman increased from nearly 1 million to 2 million, an increase of 200,000. Compared to other internet celebrities, it was a drop in the bucket, but this increase was already higher than the total number of fans of most game streamers. Even in his private messages, live streaming websites began to invite him to be a streamer. Considering that he had to register with his real name to be a streamer, and the income wasn't so high that he couldn't refuse, Chen Guang wasn't tempted at all. After thinking about it, he called Wang Qing and asked him to send the Xiangjiang car racing documentary that he had secretly produced to his email. He wanted to delete the front and back parts and only keep the scene of him wearing a mask and sitting in the car. At the same time, he wanted to cut off the part about selling the car and only keep the most important part about racing. He wanted to increase the influence of his Weibo account as fast as possible. Water could carry a boat, but it could also capsize it. Using the power of public opinion to make Su Lijing feel afraid was his first step. About half an hour later, Wang Qing sent the video over. After seeing that there were no problems, Chen Guang directly posted it. The title of the video was "I sharpened the pencil, I drove the car. I'm the almighty Superman. I'm the almighty Superman." Below was the caption, "I guarantee with my integrity that this is indeed me. If you like this video, please forward it, spread it, and follow it." Chapter 382. After posting the video, Chen Guang constantly refreshed his Weibo. As he looked at the reposts, the number of comments gradually increased. Usually, he was a rather casual person and rarely did anything with a strong sense of purpose. But tonight he was different. 5 minutes later, there were 3,000 replies and 8,000 reposts. 20 minutes later, there were 8,000 replies and 20,000 reposts. An hour later, there were 16,000 replies and 40,000 reposts. Similar to the last time, the driving skills he showed in Hong Kong were also incredible. beyond human understanding, and more down-to-earth than sharpening a pencil. There were not many people who deliberately practiced sharpening pencils. But when it came to driving, although not everyone could drive, everyone had sat in a car before. In addition, there was one more topic of debate among the netizens below. According to usual practice, some people first questioned the authenticity of the video. After all, these scenes could hardly be seen even in a movie like The Fast and the Furious. Then, when the authenticity of the video was verified by the technical geeks and the fans who witnessed the miracle that day, and gradually confirmed that it was completely true, a new theory arose. Was this Weibo user called Almighty Superman the same person in the car? This also caused widespread controversy, but the appearance of the V Special Agent Team mask showed that the credibility of his statement was still very high. An hour and a half later, after the initial promotion by fans, this Weibo ushered in the second wave of explosion after a slow brewing. More and more Weibo users who had almost forgotten about Almighty Superman suddenly remembered this person. After watching this video, more and more internet celebrities used their own channels to inquire about the authenticity of the news. They knew that this was indeed the racing god of this generation, who had been crowned a god in the circle some time ago. So they took the initiative to repost it. In fact, it was the first time that many internet celebrities saw this video. Perhaps some people had heard of the story of the Xiangjiang car gambling race, but the race organizers did not release the live video of that day to the public. Without some special channels and connections, it was impossible to get the video. After all, the car gambling race was an underground race that did not see the light of day. According to the usual style of the organizers, once this kind of video appeared on the internet, they would take the initiative to block it. But this time, they did not do so and acquiesced. At this time, the number of comments on this Weibo post had skyrocketed to 30,000, and the number of reposts had reached 100,000. Uncle Chung, who was far away in Hong Kong, even called to inquire about the situation. He was worried that Chen Guang's video had been stolen. After confirming that it was Chen Guang who did it, Uncle Chung stopped asking about it. He just found it funny that Chen Guang had great power, but he did such a trivial thing. Then he told Chen Guang that the organizer of the car race had just called to inquire about the situation. Uncle Chung regarded this matter as child's play, but Chen Guang didn't think so. He just smiled as he looked at the influence of his Weibo account. The light in his eyes became more and more scorching. Even Jiang Yage and Jin Shiyue might not be able to achieve such a skyrocketing number of comments and reposts. Let alone Chen Guang's number of followers was only a few tenths of those two. However, Chen Guang managed to do it. His videos weren't like Jiang Yage's, which didn't have any substance. Instead, they contained genuine high-quality content that could make the blood of others boil and make them worship him. Before lying on the sofa to sleep, Chen Guang looked at the number of his fans. In 3 hours, it had skyrocketed from 1.2 million to 1.5 million. There would be some follow-up effects tomorrow and the day after. Before the next video was uploaded, it might increase to nearly 3 million fans, which was enough. As a new internet celebrity, the number of this living person's fans was enough to crush most of his peers on Weibo. The next morning, Zhuo Jingxi, who had a hangover, woke up faintly. She looked up at her watch and found that it was already past 9 o'clock. Subconsciously, she jumped up from the bed and planned to rush to the bathroom to wash up. As a result, as soon as she walked out of the bedroom door, she remembered that she no longer had to go to the laboratory. Suddenly, her heart became empty. She turned her head again and saw that Chen Guang, who had stayed up until midnight, was still sleeping on the sofa. The empty feeling in her heart inexplicably disappeared. She didn't wake him up. Zhuo Jingxi gently washed her face, then closed the kitchen door, fried 3 eggs, cooked a pot of porridge, and made some shredded potatoes. Only then did she bring everything out to wake Chen Guang up to eat. I have some things to do later. Teacher Zhuo, what are your plans for today? Chen Guang, who was used to eating buns and soy milk, was happy to suddenly have 2 fried eggs to eat early in the morning. Zhuo Jingxi held her chin and thought for a while. I'll catch up on my English. After I go abroad, If I can't make ends meet for the first few months, I'll really need you to support me. Once she accepted this setting and was stripped of her identity as Chun Guang's tutor, the grudge in her heart towards the teacher-student relationship unknowingly disappeared. Although she was a little shy when she said this, she didn't try to avoid it. Chun Guang thought for a while. What if I have the opportunity to not leave the laboratory? Zhuo Jingxi heard this and was happy at first, but then she shook her head. You don't believe me? Zhuo Jingxi continued to shake her head. It's not that I don't believe it. It's just that I'm a little disappointed with the current situation of domestic scientific research. Even if the school changes its decision, I still want to go out and explore. In layman's terms, the world is so big, and I want to see it. Haha, I'll just take it as a way to relax, and also as a way to study. In the past, I couldn't let go of the laboratory, and I didn't have money. Isn't this just right? It's a rare opportunity. As she said this, she looked at Chun Guang a little embarrassedly. When she realized that she was really prepared to accept his sponsorship, without any psychological barriers, even she felt that it was unbelievable. If that's the case, that's good. Chun Guang didn't comment. If it wasn't for the fact that he had so many things on his mind, he might have noticed the obvious change in Zhuo Jingxi's attitude and took the opportunity to tease her. Oh right, don't stir up any more trouble. Go back to school and comfort Hualing. Although she's a carefree person, I'm sure she's not satisfied. Chun Guang nodded. Don't worry, I'll go find her. After leaving Zhuo Jingxi's house, Chun Guang didn't go back to school immediately. Instead, he went straight to the water bar opposite Wenqing branch and asked for a private room. He then called Wu Tong and told her to find him at the water bar after work at noon. At noon, Wu Tong, who had changed into casual clothes, sat down with a stack of documents in her hands. Chun Guang took a look and couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Although Wang Ren's table manners were ugly in school, when he was in the Jianhuan school, most of the time, he would take meat from the students' mouths. He said that it was corruption, but this kind of thing usually didn't leave any substantial evidence. It wasn't until after he went to the School of Chemical Engineering that the equipment purchase orders for the School of Chemical Engineering showed a relatively high price in the past few months. It could vaguely be considered corruption, but there was no substantial evidence. Chapter 383. Wu Tong and Wang Long only did this in private. As the main executor of the investigation, Wang Long couldn't directly go to the school as a police officer to avoid alerting the enemy. Instead, he found another reliable person, and had this person contact a few well-informed students to indirectly inquire about Wang Ren's past. For example, which student was caught cheating in an exam and fell into Wang Ren's hands. But there was no record of any disciplinary action after the investigation. Then there was a high chance that there was something fishy going on. This was how the police handled cases. This was called preliminary investigation. If the person they were investigating was an ordinary person, they might be able to directly talk to other teachers and leaders of the school to dig out more information. But this time, the person they were dealing with was Wang Ren, Su Lijing's nephew. He was especially sensitive, so the current operation could only stop at the level of a student. However, Chun Guang was a well-informed fellow. In the past, he had never sorted out Wang Ren's matters in his heart. But when he came here today, he started to recall as he looked. At the same time, he took a piece of paper and added to it. Unknowingly, the pile of evidence that Wu Tong had painstakingly organized was more like gossip than evidence, completely destroyed by the stuff that Chun Guang had dug out of his head. Looking at the 2 pages of paper that he had written densely, Lord Guang looked at Wu Tong with a meaningful gaze. Believe me, I'm really a cute little boy. I'm definitely not a gossipy person. Do you think I'll believe you? Isn't your university a little too much? Are you there to study, or to be a gossip collector? Wang Long indirectly asked at least 8 people for information, and everything he collected is here. But you know everything, and even added 2 more pages for me. Just how much gossip is in your head? Wu Tong was almost defeated by him. Poor comrade Wang Long did all his work for nothing. If you're so capable, you should have said so earlier. Chun Guang scratched his head. No, Brother Wang's work isn't for nothing. It can help me inspire ideas. That's right. Wu Tong poked his head. Save it. You're still trying to inspire me? Besides, the quantity of these things is far from enough. The lab equipment suppliers who had bribed him with money were the real deal. But they weren't easy to deal with. Look, these purchase prices look a little suspicious. If you think about it carefully, there is indeed something behind it. But isn't this the unspoken rule of the industry? These suppliers were also very cunning. They were all experts. And they would not easily leave behind any evidence that could be used against them. Sigh, my head hurts. Unless we can sow discord between us and let one or a few suppliers take the initiative to jump out as witnesses. Wu Tong rolled her eyes at him. Have you watched too many movies? What stain witnesses? How can other people still do business? Chen Guang smiled confidently. Why would I still want to do business? I'll buy him. You can do that. Wu Tong's eyes widened. Chen Guang nodded. Why not? The people who sold the equipment were just distributors, not the manufacturers. Some of them had the label of a general agent. But to put it bluntly, it was just an empty shell. I bought it in one bite. And then found the salesperson who was in contact with Wang Run at that time. Isn't this irrefutable evidence? Where did you get the money? Even if it was an empty shell, other people wouldn't just sell it, right? It should be at least a few million, right? Also, even if you really bought someone else's company, you wouldn't have any evidence against them. Who would want to find trouble with Su Lijing? That's right. I'll think of another way later. Chen Guang looked at the entire list of lab equipment distributors in Wu Tong's file and pondered. He did not comment on Wu Tong's opinion. Using normal methods, he might not be able to pry open the mouths of those suppliers. But since Chen Guang wanted to do it this time, he had to see it through to the end. He suddenly remembered something and said, There is another person. Let's go to his house tonight to meet him. Maybe he can provide us with something useful. Who? Our school's deputy dean, Mr. Han. After all, Wu Tong was now the deputy bureau chief. She still had a meeting in the police station in the afternoon. Investigating Wang Run was her private action. At the same time, she had to avoid other people in the police station. She could not rule out the possibility that someone in the Wenxing branch guessed some inside information and went to inform Su Lijing. After dinner, Wu Tong went back to the police station. Chen Guang went back to the school and walked in the direction of the graduate student dormitory. When he arrived, he happened to see Hualing bitterly moving things down from the dormitory building. Zhongyu was next to her, helping her carry another box. Why are you in such a hurry to move out of the school? Tell me if you want to move things. Is there no student who is willing to help? Chen Guang walked up quickly and snatched the box from Hualing's hands. He carried it on his back. Zhongyu spat. Stop talking. When we were eating in the cafeteria, the deputy dean of the graduate student faculty ran to our table and pointed at Hualing's nose. He told her that she must move out today. If she delayed any longer, the school security would come and kick her out. Others? The school has already posted the punishment notice under the dormitory building. Who would dare to get into trouble? Aren't you afraid? Hualing asked Zhongyu with a smile. She didn't seem to care at all. Zhongyu shrugged. What am I afraid of? Anyway, I've already been detained. They can't just give me a punishment for helping you carry a box, right? That's hard to say. Hualing laughed. I'll be waiting for you. Zhongyu pouted. Actually, my family always said that it's useless for me to study. After I graduate, I should go to work. If I work, I can get married and make do with my life. Fortunately, I wasn't expelled. Otherwise, believe it or not, I would immediately find a job for you guys to see. Chen Guang, who was walking in front, laughed. Follow me to the parking lot. My car is over there. You two don't be anxious. The good show has to wait. Senior Hualing, don't be anxious either. After we get out, let's rent a house in the neighborhood over there. Maybe you'll have to move back in a few days. Don't say that you don't want to study anymore. Both of you say that you don't care. But in fact, you really want to do something with Teacher Zhua, right? This photocatalyst thing is really magical. I've only been in contact with it for a few days, and I feel like my whole body is about to sink into it. Even in my dreams, I want to see something that can be made into something real to benefit the future generations. Yo, I still don't know that you have a car. Zhongyu teased. Chen Guang was proud. Of course. There are some things I don't want to say in front of Luo Jin. Now that we're on the same side, I'll say it here. If I don't do my job well, and Senior Hualing can't go back to school, I'll open a company, and you can come to work here. The two girls covered their mouths and laughed. They thought that he was really funny. Seeing that the two of them didn't believe him, Chen Guang hid his words in his heart. He was waiting for the two of them to see his phaeton and worship him with sparkling eyes. Yo, not bad, young man. A Passat. It looks quite impressive. When they arrived at the parking lot, Zhongyu said happily, young man, you're quite rich. Looking at the Passat logo that he had deliberately asked the 4S shop to make, Chen Guang felt a faint pain in his balls. He said, this is a phaeton. You're so funny. Hualing and Zhongyu said in unison. It really is a phaeton. Okay, it's a phaeton. I'm really scared of you. Zhongyu said. Chapter 384. According to Hualing's original plan, she wanted to take the things to the train station and ship them back to the northeast. She had already told her family about it, and they were very open-minded about it. Even her father almost wanted to argue with Su Lijing. Hualing spent a lot of effort to suppress her father's anger. Anyway, if the east was dark, the west was bright. She would still be able to survive if she did not go to graduate school. However, under Chen Guang's insistence, Hualing changed her mind. She did not want to leave Wujing for the time being. She originally wanted to rent a house, but Zhuo Jingxi called and scolded Chen Guang before taking him to her house. Actually, it was not that Chen Guang did not think of this idea. It was just that he did not want to have another person in Zhuo Jingxi's house. As for why, he could not say. Hualing's little plan did not work out, and she had to help move 3 times. She was exhausted, so she stayed at Zhuo Jingxi's house for the time being. Before she left, Hualing quietly pulled Chen Guang to a corner. She hesitated for a moment and said softly, before Xiao Lu committed suicide, she sent me a text saying that she buried a metal box under a cherry tree behind her house. I asked her what was inside, but she did not tell me. She only told me to dig it up after I graduate if I still remember it. Chen Guang raised his eyebrows. Really? Yes, only I know about it. I plan to dig it up in a few days. She would not do something so meaningless. Hualing's eyes were filled with determination. Chen Guang frowned slightly, trying to guess what the girl named Ding Lu was feeling at that time. If what Hualing said was true, that she was drugged, she would definitely hate Wang Ren to the core. Then her boyfriend made a big deal out of the matter, and she was too embarrassed to face anyone in school. So she chose to leave school. However, she could not tell her family about this. Her family would definitely feel that she had gone to great lengths to provide for a university student. But she chose to quit school without saying a word. So when she returned home, she would be looked down upon. Later on, the news of what happened at school spread to her family. Perhaps it was a false rumor, but it turned out that she had behaved inappropriately at school and ended up being expelled. It was as if she had been abandoned by the entire world, so she chose to commit suicide. Before she died, who was the person she hated the most? Who did he want to take revenge on the most? Her boyfriend who didn't understand her and took the matter to the school forum? A family that placed all their hopes on a university student like her, only to end up with nothing? Of course not. It must be Wang Run who pulled her into the abyss. However, she knew that there might not be many people in this world who could help her. She was a student, and Wang Run was the dean of the discipline department of the academy. He was famous in the academy for being able to cover the sky with one hand and committing all sorts of evil deeds. Moreover, Su Lijing was there to protect him. Who could deal with him? Therefore, she locked her last hope of revenge in a box, buried it in the soil, and told her best friend Hualing. However, she also understood Hualing's helplessness, so she only asked Hualing to dig it up after graduation if she still remembered it. Otherwise, she wouldn't have gone through so much trouble. The thing in the box would definitely drag Wang Ren to hell. Perhaps, Ding Lu only hoped that the net of heaven had long arms, and that she had planted a seed of hatred. In the future, there would always be someone with enough power to water this seed, make it sprout, and grow into a vengeful tree that would hang Wang Ren to death. Of course, even if there was irrefutable evidence, with Wang Ren's background, it might not be able to bring him down. There were too many similar cases in the world. Truth often lost to power. However, it was different this time, because there was Chen Guang. After understanding the reason, Chen Guang's eyes lit up. He had been worried that he couldn't find the conclusive evidence, but he didn't expect it to be in Hua Ling's hands. Don't worry, wait for a few days. I'll go with you to Ding Lu's house, and I'll try to keep your status as a student, Chen Guang said. Hua Ling waved her hand. I know you're considerate, but forget it. That's Su Lijing we're talking about. In fact, if it weren't for this incident, I would have kept Xiao Lu's secret in my heart for the rest of my life, and never cared about that iron box. I'm not that noble of a person. Don't say that, you're already very brave, Chen Guang laughed. What are you two whispering about? Are you going to have dinner together again? At this time, Zhongyu came over. Chen Guang shook his head. No, I have something to do and have to go back to school. By the way, is there a piano in school? Piano? Why are you asking? There's one in the performance hall of the Institute of Arts. If it was during school hours, I could contact the students in the Institute of Arts, but it's summer break, and the door is locked, Zhongyu said, puzzled. Chen Guang was happy. It would be even better if the door was locked. Let's go there tonight. Thinking about it carefully, he was really busy. He had to hurry up and record a video, and prepare to go back and write the evidence he had so far into a story. He also had to be busy collecting further evidence. In the past, he had never done anything with such a clear purpose. Now that he had found a direction, Chen Guang felt that he was unbelievably fulfilled. It was as if he had become Don Quixote, riding a skinny donkey, waving the lance in his hand, ready to crash into the mountain that was Su Lijing. Hua Ling and Zhongyu stayed at Zhuo Jingxi's house for dinner. The three girls looked like they had a lot to talk about, so Chen Guang did not interfere. When he returned to the dormitory, he first opened Weibo. Half a day had passed, and the number of comments on the racing video had exceeded 150,000. The number of shares had reached 300,000, and the number of fans was close to 2 million. Chen Guang looked at the screen and laughed. He thought to himself, with how popular my Weibo is now, if I want to criticize someone, I'm afraid anyone would have a hard time, right? Then, he searched for Su Lijing's life on the search engine. After reading it, he could not help but feel a little depressed. The information that could be found on the internet was, of course, all praises. Back then, Su Lijing had returned to the country with an extremely dazzling halo. From the 1980s until now, he had been active in the country's economic field. Not only did he have a lot of works, but he had also spoken at many important meetings at many critical moments. He had indeed done some practical things for the country and the people. Even during several financial crises, Su Lijing also participated in the expert group, racking his brains to come up with strategies for the leaders at that time. The policies that were introduced one after another helped the country to remain independent in the turbulent international economic environment at that time, and maintain rapid economic growth for many years. Their expert group was the predecessor of the central think tank. Until now, Su Lijing was still a core member of it. This was information that Chen Guang dug out from Wu Tong. From this perspective, Su Lijing, who had given up the generous treatment abroad and devoted himself to the construction of the country, was simply a perfect scholar. Not to say that he was comparable to the two bombs and one star, but from an economic point of view, his wisdom alone was enough to rival hundreds of billions of companies. But no one is perfect. Chen Guang's face was gloomy. He felt vaguely sad to be enemies with such a person. It was not because he was afraid, but because he felt sorry for Su Lijing from the bottom of his heart. Perhaps Su Lijing felt that he was a person who had contributed to the country. Allowing a small figure to act like a tyrant in a small area of the school was far less damage to the country than his own contributions. So it was not a big deal. From a big point of view, that was indeed the case. But when the matter was narrowed down to Ding Lu alone, Su Lijing became Satan standing behind the devil. Everyone had their own definition of justice in their heart. Their starting point and foothold might be different. But this time, Chen Guang decided to stick to his justice. You may hate me, but someone has to remove the thorn, that is Wang Ren, from your body. I'll do it. Chapter 385. Just as he was about to go out and meet Wu Tong, Chen Guang unexpectedly received a call from the form teacher. In Gokyo University, the form teacher and the counselor were two different systems. The form teacher was usually in charge of a class, mainly in charge of learning, but there was nothing much to manage. The number of times Chen Guang had seen the form teacher during his 3 years in university could be counted on one hand. The counselor was in charge of several classes at the same time, mainly in charge of the daily life and discipline of each class, as well as the distribution of scholarships. At the same time, the school policies were conveyed to each class. The teachers and students often interacted with each other. Now that Zhuo Jingxi had been removed as a counselor, the form teacher that he had not seen for a long time finally appeared. The form teacher first asked where Chen Guang was, and when he heard that he was still in school, he said that he would come to find him immediately. After hanging up, Chen Guang did not need to think to know the purpose of his visit. Not long after, the mysterious form teacher, Teacher Zhou, ran over with a head full of sweat. When she saw Chen Guang, she said to his face, "What's wrong with you? You beat Director Wang up like that." Chen Guang did not get up from his chair. He took a sip of tea and said, "Teacher Zhou, did you come here just to scold me? Oh, I know. I've been scolded by you. That's enough." Teacher Zhou did not expect this kind of attitude from him. She was stunned at first, then said angrily, "How can you still act like nothing happened? What else can I do? So scared that I can't eat or sleep. How can you not know what kind of person Wang Ren is? So what if I beat him up?" Chen Guang looked at this person calmly, thinking that he was particularly funny. Teacher Zhou slammed the table. "You really have no remorse at all? Why should I have remorse? He shouldn't have hit me? I don't want to repeat the cause and effect of the matter with you, because it's meaningless. All right, Teacher Zhou, you've already been here, and I've received your intention. You can leave. This is your job, and I understand, but I don't want to waste my saliva on you. I'm very busy." Chen Guang asked him to leave. "You're chasing me away." Miss Zhou had heard of a rather arrogant boy in her class before. She also knew that he was the one who forced Wang Ren to leave the Jianhuan Academy, but she did not expect him to be so difficult to deal with. "I'm not chasing you away. It's just that even if you keep talking to me for 7 to 8 hours, it'll be useless." Teacher Zhou choked on his breath. Instead, she was shocked by his stubbornness. Her tone softened again. "Chen Guang, listen to me. Don't think that I was ordered by someone to scold you. I'm doing this for your own good. Now that things have already happened and Director Wang is magnanimous enough to not pursue the matter further, the Academy's leaders hope that you can at least go and apologize. This can be considered as making peace. Do you think that's okay?" So that was how it was. Presumably, the matter had already been spread to the ears of Principal Tong and the others. Although Su Lijing didn't say anything, it was impossible for him to have no grudges in his heart. The leaders of the Jianhuan Academy had no way of knowing what was on a higher level. They could only speculate about Su Lijing's thoughts from their own point of view. Hence, Dean Tong had a huge headache. Vice Dean Deng, who was originally on the same side as Wang Ren, had no way of not doing something. Principal Tong was extremely distressed. He vaguely guessed that perhaps Wu Shan and the vice principal had reached a compromise. In his own opinion, he didn't want to get involved in this matter. However, if he didn't do anything, Su Lijing might think that he was deliberately being perfunctory. After all, last time when Wang Ren left the Jianhuan Academy, Su Lijing gave him enough face and approved of his decision. However, at that time, Wang Ren only moved to another place. It wasn't like this time where he was sent to the hospital. This time he had to do something. He couldn't do nothing, but he also couldn't be biased towards either side. Otherwise, he would get himself into trouble. Principal Tong thought hard for a long time and came up with a good plan. He might as well be the peacemaker and persuade Chen Guang to apologize to Wang Ren. Then this matter would be completely suppressed. As for the other people who were implicated because of this matter, he couldn't protect them even if he wanted to. Even old lady Shu couldn't protect them, so he was also powerless. As the principal, there were some things that he couldn't say clearly. He let Teacher Zhou, the teacher in charge of Chen Guang's class, do it for him. Unfortunately, he couldn't tell Teacher Zhou that Chen Guang had Wu Shan as his backing. Teacher Zhou had to be more careful when talking to him. Wasn't that a little too much? Therefore, Teacher Zhou couldn't completely understand Principal Tong's meaning. She still used that condescending tone to talk to Chen Guang. The conversation broke down the moment they met. Regarding Teacher Zhou's suggestion, Chen Guang said straightforwardly, "Apologize? Save it. I think he deserved to be beaten. Even if he beat me, I'm not interested in apologizing." "You, how can you be like this? We are doing this for your own good. There are some things that I shouldn't say. But as for Vice Principal Su, in short, if you can go and apologize, it will be a good thing for you and the academy. Why don't you listen to my advice? Isn't it just an apology? It's just saying a few words. Is it that hard? If others don't pursue this matter, can't you give them a way out?" Glancing at Mr. Zhou, Chen Guang instantly understood what was going on. Yes, they didn't pursue this matter. Teacher Zhua, Senior Zhongyu, and Senior Hualing, you know about it, right? Then tell me. I was the one who beat him up. They didn't pursue this matter, but they punished other unrelated people. What's the meaning of this? Why? Chen Guang asked. Teacher Zhou was stumped by his question. Why? Yes, why? Chen Guang looked at Teacher Zhou with a smile. Forget it, let me remind you. Wang Ren has Su Lijing to back him up. I also have someone to back me up, so they didn't do anything to me. Teacher Zhou, you have to be more respectful when you speak to me. Chen Guang had pointed it out himself. Teacher Zhou was embarrassed. He couldn't continue with the harsh words, and neither could the soft ones. Seeing his awkward expression, Chen Guang was not in the mood to waste time with him. He rolled his eyes and said, "Okay, I'll apologize to Director Wang tomorrow or the day after." Teacher Zhou was overjoyed. She did not expect that there would be a glimmer of hope. Really? Chen Guang nodded. Really? But I don't know where Director Wang's ward is. I'll have to trouble Teacher Zhou to tell me. Teacher Zhou happily wrote a note to Chen Guang. She thought for a moment and said, "I'll go with you. It'll be more sincere." Chen Guang took the note and looked at Teacher Zhou meaningfully. "Forget it. I'll go by myself." "You, what are you going to do?" Teacher Zhou vaguely felt that something was wrong. Chen Guang grinned. "Apologize." His smile was exceptionally bright and full of sincerity. Teacher Zhou's mind was in a mess when he left. He always felt that he might have caused trouble. However, Chen Guang insisted that he was going to apologize, leaving him speechless. Poor comrade little Zhou. He even began to hesitate whether he should quickly inform Director Tong and let the hospital arrange for Wang Ren to hide in another ward. What kind of mess was this? On the other side, Chen Guang and Wu Tong, who had just gotten off work, went to Deputy Director Han's neighborhood. Old Lady Shu asked Chen Guang to look for Deputy Director Han, but she did not want little Han, who had no real power, to be dragged into this mess. Therefore, it was better to go directly to his house to talk face to face. Chen Guang was also a repeat customer of this neighborhood. Wu Tong's memory was also good. When she stopped the car, she clapped her hands. "It seems that when we met by this river, you helped me catch a thief? Why did you come here that day?" Chen Guang's mouth twitched. He recalled the youth under the sunset, the medieval knight armor, that he almost suffocated to death, and Comrade Old Han's broken gong-like voice. The memory was full of bitterness. It's a long story. Chapter 386. Vice President Han didn't let the two of them enter the community. Instead, he ran out sneakily and pulled the two of them to a pavilion in the park by the river to sit down and chat. He was indeed very afraid of Su Lijing. He was not the only teacher of Gokyo University in this community. He was afraid of being seen by others. "Chen Guang, don't laugh at me. I can't help it. If I were 20 years younger, I would stand out and testify with you. But now," Old Han said with some shame. Chen Guang interrupted him. Vice President Han, don't say that. I understand. I am very grateful that you are willing to give me these things. In Chen Guang's hand was a list of names. There were not many names, just a few people. But it was different from the list that Chen Guang had sorted out himself. It was full of young female staff, who had come in and out of the college over the years. About half of the students, including Chen Guang, knew about it. After all, Wang Ren was arrogant. He didn't avoid eating breakfast in a small shop outside the school. However, there were still 2 or 3 people outside of the students' rumors, but these weren't important. You could say that there was a problem with his lifestyle, but this didn't matter. What was truly important was the name placed at the very top, the one that Vice Dean Han had deliberately bolded in black. Guoming, Fatty Wang's former director of the discipline department. When Guoming was the director, Fatty Wang was just an officer who had just been transferred to the college to participate in the administrative management. He had just left the ranks of the school police. At that time, Chen Guang had not yet entered the school, so he didn't know these things. But in the information provided by Vice President Han, it was written that the former director named Guoming had good working ability and was a much more upright person. He worked steadily for 10 years without any mistakes. But less than half a year after Wang Ren came, he resigned. It wasn't a promotion, nor was it a flat transfer. This upright and methodical director chose to resign from the school without hesitation. There must be a reason behind this. When Guoming packed up his things and left the academy, no one dared to see him off. Only old Han secretly came to find him afterward and drank a table of wine with him. Only then did he know the reason. Guoming was forced to leave by Wang Rensheng. Fatty Wang didn't use any extraordinary means. He just waved his hand and summoned his scoundrels from when he was in the underworld to stop Guoming from time to time. Every time he saw Guoming, he would beat him up. But he didn't beat him until he was crippled. He just kept disgusting him. Guoming had been holding on until one day, when his daughter was escorted home by Wang Ren's fair-weather friends after school. The poor former director broke down. This kind of thing was ridiculous. How could such a lowly method be used in a workplace struggle? Guoming had also complained to the leaders of the school more than once, but no one cared about his opinion. They only said that he might have offended some students at work, and he'd better take the initiative to find a way to resolve the relationship. Everyone knew that Wang Ren couldn't get away with these things, but no one could stand up to help Guoming. Fatty Wang used this kind of lowly, stupid, and dirty means to force Guoming out of the school, who originally planned to show his strength in the school, and naturally sat in the position of director. In the information given by Deputy Director Han, Guoming's experience was clearly described in a few words. After reading it, Wu Tong slapped the table in the pavilion. Guoming is too weak. Didn't he know to call the police? Deputy Director Han glanced at her again. Director Wu, it's easy for you to say, but how do you know that he didn't call the police? Wu Tong suddenly became speechless. She really didn't want to agree with old Han's words, but she also knew that he didn't need to talk nonsense about this kind of thing. Not only did he call the police, but he also has 2 surveillance videos in his hands. One was at the school gate. At that time, Wang Ren was still a security guard. He led 7 or 8 people to beat a boy into a vegetative state. The other was at the school hospital. The seriously injured student was sent to the school hospital for emergency treatment. Wang Ren followed the nurse who was giving the student N4 drip and insulted her. As old Han spoke, he began to beat his chest and stamped his feet. When Guoming told me this, it really hurt like a knife was cutting into my heart. Now that I think about it, I also feel ashamed. I knew that this kind of dirty thing happened around me, but I couldn't do anything about it. I turned a blind eye to it. I've let down my teacher for 10 years. I don't have the face to face the 10,000 books that I've read. Chen Guang and Wu Tong silently looked at old Han for a long time. They thought to themselves, another poor person who hid something in his heart and was almost forced to break down. But what can we do? I saw that video with my own eyes. Guoming sent it to the Commission for Discipline Inspection, the police station, and the procuratorate, but all of them disappeared without a trace. In this vast China, who can touch Su Lijing's son? Actually, I also wanted to be like Guoming. Seeing that things weren't going well, I would just hide away. But teacher Shu wouldn't let me leave. She said that the current elder Tong was obsessed with administration and had no heart for learning. Vice Principal Deng was even more of a sucker for the rich and only cared about singing praises for the good and helping Wang Ren do evil. If I leave too, there'll be no one to support someone like Xiaozhua who sincerely wants to learn. This place of learning will really become that bastard Wang Ren's den of lust. As old Han spoke, he desperately pounded his head with his fists. Just like that, he seemed to have aged more than 10 years. After waiting for a long time, Guoming arrived. Today he was already in his 40s. His face looked oily, and he no longer had the dispirited and depressed look he had when he left school. After he left school, he found a second spring in his career. He found a job at a listed company. Now that a few years had passed, he was already that company's administrative department manager and the head of human resources management. Before coming here, Old Han had already told him what happened today. He seemed to be very busy. He sat down and went straight to the point. You guys want to collect evidence to accuse Wang Ren? Chen Guang nodded. Wu Tong also nodded. I'm Wenxing Town's Deputy Chief Wu Tong. We are indeed collecting evidence of Wang Ren's crimes. Guoming looked at the two of them with a scrutinizing gaze, then turned to look at Old Han. To be honest, the two of you are too young for me to trust. Many years ago, I did this myself. Of course, my ending was quite miserable. Luckily, I had a good classmate who helped me out. Now I'm living quite well. With just the two of you, I really don't think you can do anything. Wu Tong gritted his teeth. Mr. Gua, I'm really determined this time. Guoming suddenly laughed. Thank you for your determination. The world is lacking people like you. But what's the use? My life is very stable now. I really don't want to change anything. Furthermore, although I do have a lot of evidence on Wang Ren, if I want this evidence to be really convincing, I have to stand up and accuse him. And those two victims, the student is already dead, and the nurse already has a stable family. Think about it, it's been so many years. If I stand up again, it means that I'll be in Su Lijing's sights again. My life, my family will be destroyed. Needless to say, that nurse's husband doesn't know that she was once humiliated. What reason did you use to convince her to stand up and accuse Wang Ren? Young man, this world is cruel. You guys are taking it for granted. Forgive me for not being able to keep you company. Guoming's words were very hurtful and full of despair. Chapter 387. Are you afraid? Are you backing down? Wu Tong asked anxiously. Guoming shook his head. I just don't want to do something pointless. At this moment Old Han, who had been silent all this while, said faintly, This Chief Wu's father is Wu Shan. Guoming, who was speaking with confidence and composure, suddenly paused. When he looked at Wu Tong again, the look in his eyes was completely different from before. Really? He turned his head to look at Old Han. Old Han nodded heavily. Really? Chen Guang and Wu Tong stared at Guoming. No matter what he said next, the two of them understood his decision. Guoming wasn't spouting nonsense. He had left the school for 10 years. After his life was ruined by Wang Ren once, he regained control of his life. Everyone knew how protective Su Lijing was. No matter if the accusation was successful or not, Guoming was just an ant in front of Su Lijing that could be easily crushed to death. It really took a lot of courage for him to make such a decision now. Guoming stared at Wu Tong as if he hated her. Why did she put the opportunity in front of him again after 10 years, making him face such a painful and difficult decision? But Guoming seemed to be thanking her. She let him know that there were still people in this world who were willing to stand up for justice. He even thought that Wu Tong's motive might not be that simple. Her actions might represent Wu Shan's instructions. Maybe this action wasn't just targeted at Wang Ren, but a drastic measure against Su Lijing. That was even better. The only thing that could bring down a person like Su Lijing was definitely not the law, but a higher level of competition. On a summer night by the river, a breeze blew through the willows. The air was filled with a damp, rotten smell. Crickets were chirping tirelessly not far away. The four people in the pavilion were silent. Finally, Guoming slammed the stone table and broke the silence. Let's do it. Let's send Wang Ren to hell together. Let Su Lijing know what retribution is. Chen Guang, Wu Tong and Old Han laughed together. Old Han also threw the teapot in his hand. This old man will also do it with you. If there's a day when I testify in court, I'll go with you. The putrid smell seemed to vanish with Guoming's heavy slap. Not for fame, not for profit. Another comrade, with indomitable courage, stepped onto Chen Guang's warship. After all, there were still good people in this world. After the two parted ways with Old Han and Guoming, Chen Guang looked at Wu Tong, who was jumping around happily and hesitated. Of course, he knew that what he was about to do was not what Wu Shan wanted to see. What Wu Shan wanted was balance, an exchange of interests, not a life and death struggle like he was currently doing. He also knew that the real reason Guoming and Old Han were interested in Wu Tong. They all thought that Wu Shan had instructed them to do what they did, but that was not the case. However, if they didn't use this method, the two of them might not be able to make up their minds. Chen Guang could only think in his heart. Vice Dean Han was a scholar, and Mr. Guo was a good administrator. If this matter really ruined their futures, even if he had to start a company in the future, he would have to help them make up for their futures. This might be difficult, but it was not a castle in the air. Wu Tong didn't go back to Wenqing town with him, and even invited him to stay at her house in Wujing City for a night. Although Chen Guang was tempted, he still didn't agree. On one hand, he was in a hurry to go back to school to record the piano performance video, and on the other hand, he knew that if he went to her house, he would not be able to escape Wu Shan's call. It wasn't that Chen Guang was afraid of Wu Shan, but he didn't want to accept his so-called exchange of interests and balance theory. People with different principles couldn't make plans together. Wu Tong and Wu Shan still had a father-daughter relationship, and Chen Guang and Wu Shan weren't that familiar and important to each other, so he didn't want to accept his education. Driving Wu Tong's car back to school, Chen Guang first went back to the dorm to get a mask, and then went straight to the Art Institute building. It was already past 10 at night, and there weren't many people in the school during the summer holidays. The huge campus was quiet and serene. Chen Guang turned into a black shadow and climbed up the outer wall of the Art Institute building. Thanks to the experience of climbing the mast countless times in the Sea of Transient, he quickly climbed up the outer wall of the Art Institute building. After struggling for about 10 minutes, he finally entered the performance hall. Two campus police officers were patrolling the school, and as they walked, they could vaguely hear the sound of a piano playing. "What's that sound?" one of the campus police officers asked his partner. The other turned his head to look in the direction of the Art Institute building, and couldn't help but feel creeped out by the cold wind. "Is someone playing the piano over there? Let's go take a look." "No. It's the middle of the night. How could someone be playing the piano in there? It's not a person. F***ck. Can you not say it out loud?" The satisfied Chen Guang didn't know that the two poor brothers outside were scared out of their wits. Back in the dorm, he turned on his computer and blurred out the parts that might expose him to be in the performance hall of the Art Institute building of Gokyo University, and then uploaded the video. As per international practice, he scrolled through Weibo, and before he knew it, the number of his fans had completely broken through 2 million, reaching as high as 2.6 million. Weibo had already invited him more than once to activate his V-verification and self-media verification. Chen Guang was tempted, but he still knelt down to the real name verification. His heart ached when he couldn't earn money. On the other hand, Wu Tong suddenly came home, and Wu Shan was overjoyed. He personally cooked a bowl of dumplings for her as a midnight snack, and watched Wu Tong eat happily. "Why did you suddenly come back today? What were you busy with?" Wu Shan asked. Wu Tong waved her hand. "Nothing much. I was singing a song with a few friends." "Why? Are you unhappy that I'm back?" Wu Shan did not suspect anything. "How can I do that? I'm more than happy about it. Why don't I transfer you to the city after some time? You can stay at home every day. I'm always alone at home, and I don't have anyone to talk to when I come home at night." Wu Tong rolled her eyes. "How can that be? You are the head of the department. Many people are lining up to treat you to a meal. It's not like you don't know that I never attend those events. My identity is sensitive, and I can't let others gossip about me, Wu Shan said. That's right. Comrade Wu Shan, you are famous for being selfless, and willing to sacrifice your family for the greater good. Wu Tong felt that he was trying to tell her something again. She waved her hand impatiently, finished the dumplings, and went back to her room to sleep. After Wu Tong entered her room, Wu Shan frowned. He could tell that Wu Tong was hiding something from him. But he didn't dare to interrogate his daughter. Just when he was trying to figure out what Wu Tong was hiding, his phone suddenly rang. It was a call from Chen Guang. Chapter 388. Chen Guang held the mouse in one hand and refreshed Weibo continuously. He held his phone in the other hand and waited for the call to be connected. Wu Shan quickly got up and glanced at Wu Tong's closed bedroom before returning to his room. Little Chen, what's up? The change in the way he addressed Wu Tong could be seen. On the other end, Chen Guang grinned and did not mind. Uncle Wu, I'm sorry to call you so late, but there's one thing I think I should talk to you about in advance. Wu Shan's heart skipped a beat, and he instantly understood. It seems like what I said to you before was for nothing. Chen Guang chuckled. It's not for nothing. Uncle Wu, your life philosophy is certainly correct from the perspective of a person's future. Just tell me what's next. You're keeping me in suspense. Even Wu Shan felt that it was weird. He had only met Chen Guang twice, and they didn't even exchange 10 words. But when he spoke to Chen Guang over the phone, he would subconsciously treat Chen Guang as a junior. Even though he had made it clear that he was not an obedient junior, Wu Shan was not particularly angry. Although this kid had saved Wu Tong's life, Wu Shan did not want to admit that the longer he got involved in the system, the more he envied Chen Guang's carefree personality. Whether it was helping him deal with the small fry Wang Ren last time, or indirectly dragging him to the opposite side of Su Lijing this time. Although Wu Shan was a little troubled, he really did not want to blame him. Is there some kind of magic in this kid? My daughter likes him, and I don't hate him. Wu Shan, who had never been superstitious, became superstitious. All right, I'll go to Wang Ren's ward tomorrow or the day after. No matter what, I have to make Su Lijing change his mind. I can't let my teacher and classmates be implicated by me. Chen Guang took a deep breath and said, You know that Su Li didn't pursue this matter because of me. If you do this, it will make things very difficult for me. Wu Shan's voice sounded very calm. On the other end of the phone, Chen Guang grunted. That's why I'm communicating with you in advance tonight, Uncle Wu. If you think it's necessary, you can make it clear to Su Lijing in advance, and draw a clear line between us. I don't really understand things at your level, but you know, I don't want to make things difficult for you. Even if I'm the one being expelled, don't touch my teacher and other students. It seems that no matter what I say, I won't be able to change your mind. I'm a little curious. What do you have to make Su Lijing yield? Wu Shan asked curiously. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but public opinion. Public opinion? This is indeed a good thing, but it's not something ordinary people can control. I'm afraid it won't have any effect on him. Wu Shan began to guide Chen Guang. Uncle Wu, you don't have to worry about that. Anyway, I'll give it a try first. If it doesn't work, I'll think of something else. Since you've made up your mind and I can't persuade you, I'll wish you success in advance. However, you're still young. Listen to me, don't go to extremes. As for the impact this might have on me, you don't have to care about it. It's already happened anyway. Besides, since I've already protected you, of course, I won't go back on my word. This isn't just your fault. If I'm too weak, won't Su Lijing look down on me for no reason? Wu Shan recalled Chen Guang's true abilities. Although he did not know how he did it back then, it was true that he had single-handedly killed all the tyrannical bandits with Shurjio's strength. Such a person was equivalent to a huge time bomb. If he was really forced into a dead end, the consequences would be extremely serious. When Wu Shan said this, he looked in the direction of Wu Tong's bedroom. He really did not want to have to personally order the arrest of Chen Guang one day. Chen Guang grunted and hung up the phone. He lay back on the chair and pondered. Chen Guang did not know what Wu Shan would do. Deep down in his heart, he did not want Wu Shan to communicate with Su Lijing again. However, this idea seemed a little too selfish. He could not help but think that perhaps Wu Shan was right. Perhaps he really did not need to be so anxious. However, would retreating be useful? Would enduring make one live a happier life? Not necessarily. Back then, when the family's hot pot restaurant had an accident, Old Man endured it like this. However, the result that awaited the whole family was a hasty court judgment. They shouldered all the responsibility and were back to square one. Now they had to bear millions of compensation debts. Even if it was willful this time, I must do it according to the truest thoughts in the depths of my heart. Whether I'm naive, ignorant, or crazy, it doesn't matter. Endure for a moment, take a step back, and the world will be clear? However, even if he endured Wang Run and Su Lijing this time, the next time there would be Zhao Run and Qian Lijing. He would have to be like a tortoise, hiding in its shell, and living in fear for the rest of his life. What was the point of that? The next morning, just as dawn broke, Chen Guang received a call from Wu Tong. She said that she was already waiting for him downstairs. Wu Tong looked apologetic. I don't know what's wrong with the bureau. They suddenly gave me an urgent mission. I have to go to another province to arrest. Oh, this is a secret mission. I almost let it slip. Chen Guang understood, but his face did not reveal any flaws. It's fine. Work is more important and cannot be delayed. You go do your work first. I'll run around alone for the next few days. We can work together when you come back. A few days won't make much of a difference. Wu Tong grunted and took her car keys and left in a hurry. Looking at her silhouette, Chen Guang felt that Wu Shan had done something in the end, and sending Wu Tong away was the right decision. He was afraid that before the dust settled on Wang Run and Su Lijing, she would not be able to come back. Sigh, if old Han and Guo Ming's determination was shaken because of this, there was nothing he could do. Of course, Chen Guang had already expected this. It could even be said that he had deliberately sent Wu Tong away. When he realized that Wu Shan didn't support him, he made up his mind. He didn't want to leave an impression on Wu Shan, as if he had deliberately dragged Wu Tong into this matter. Chen Guang did not want to use Wu Tong. His previous decision was thoughtless. If he went alone, he could leave some space between Wu Shan and Su Lijing. If he really dragged Wu Tong into this, he was afraid that the two of them would really fight to the death. No matter what the final outcome was, Wu Shan would definitely be troubled. Chen Guang did not want to be ungrateful and make himself look despicable for no reason. It did not matter that Wu Tong left. Guo Ming had sent the two most crucial videos last night. Together with the things Ding Lu hid in the box, it might be enough. Driving a phaeton into the city, Chen Guang first called Wang Qing and asked him to find a few people to go with him. Chen Guang's plan was very simple. If he wanted to use the conventional way to make those companies that sold experimental equipment hand over the evidence of bribery, it would be impossible. As for buying the company, it was just a joke. If he really bought someone else, it would not leave any evidence. Therefore, he had to use some unorthodox methods. Last time, Zhongbai said that Wang Qing's family was very capable. Wouldn't it be stupid not to use the resources? However, Wang Qing came in person and brought a few big brothers, who were obviously big shots in the underworld. When the two sides met, Wang Qing introduced them one by one. He did not boast about these people, but in short, no matter where they went, both the underworld and the underworld had to give them some face. On the other hand, Chen Guang felt embarrassed, while Wang Qing laughed it off. He only said that when those uncles heard that he needed them to support him, they were too embarrassed to send their subordinates over. Hence, they decided to come personally. The most important thing to support was nothing more than face. Anyway, everyone had nothing to do, so the face of the old guy was certainly the most useful. Therefore, Chen Guang and Wang Qing wandered around the city for a whole day with this luxurious lineup that had not been seen in Wujing City for 10 years. They went to 8 companies in one breath. The super luxurious lineup was really useful. After a whole day, Chen Guang did not spend much effort to get copies or originals of checks, transfer records, and call recordings. Chapter 389. These things were the most solid evidence. Generally, experienced purchasing managers would not leave behind so many pieces of evidence. It was Wang Ren's fault. When he was in the Jianhuan school, he was used to bullying the students. When he came to the School of Chemical Engineering, he was still the same. He was arrogant, fearless, and did not take these suppliers seriously. He did not pay attention to any techniques. And as a result, these people secretly left a lot of evidence. Now they all fell into the hands of Chen Guang. After a busy day, Chen Guang did not return to school. Instead, he drove directly to the entrance of the Dechuan Province Hospital, where Wang Ren was staying, and found a hotel to stay. Tomorrow it was time to apologize. Before going to bed, Chen Guang first organized the information he collected during this time, and wrote a long article on the hotel computer. This long article didn't have any special content. It was just a combination of the gossip Wu Tong had asked Wang Long to gather, the rumors in his head, and the stories of the 8 equipment buyers. As for the stories between the former faculty and staff that Elder Han told him, he did not plan to write it for the time being. These things had to be left as a bombshell later. After carefully examining his carefully crafted long article with satisfaction, Chen Guang was quite proud of himself. Sure enough, he had the potential to become an internet celebrity. Even if he did not post a video, as long as he deliberately wrote, he could become a good jokester. This long article, aside from the fact that most of the names were pseudonyms, was written vividly and vividly. Once it was published, it would definitely cause a surge of emotions and anger. It perfectly described the image of a scoundrel who mingled in the holy land of the school. The next morning, when Chen Guang woke up, he first posted a seemingly brainless sentence on the Weibo of Almighty Superman. Wang Wu is too good. The benevolent are not benevolent. At this time, the total number of fans on his Weibo was close to 4 million. In the video of his piano performance posted the day before yesterday, he wore a mask and challenged the top 10 internationally renowned difficult songs one by one. His performance was so accurate that it made people's hair stand on end, and it completely shocked everyone's ears. At first, when the video was heard by people who didn't know much about music, they might think, "Oh, this almighty Superman is amazing. He can even play the piano." But when a true professional carefully examined each of his songs, compared them one by one, and conducted an in-depth analysis, the world knew how amazing he was. There were thousands of people who could play the piano, but there was almost no one who could play the 10 most difficult songs in one go without cramping up their hands. Not only did he not cramp, he even maintained the precision of a player from beginning to end. There had never been such a person in history. If it wasn't for the fact that Chen Guang took out the pencil and sharpener that he had been hiding in his pocket, and performed the magic skill of sharpening a rose in an instant to verify his identity, no one would believe that the person wearing the mask was the same person. At this time, people finally understood the meaning of the ID Almighty Superman. After all this time, he had not added any accounts or accepted any advertisements. He had only been posting videos or acting cute from time to time. His purpose of becoming an internet celebrity was to let others know that he was here to show off. He wanted to tell them that no matter what he did, he was the best. No wonder he was called Almighty Superman. Brother, you are so honest. Although he looked really thick-skinned, he really couldn't refute it until now. Other than that, Chen Guang also received an unexpected surprise. He didn't know who had reposted his first pencil sharpening video on YouTube. It was definitely an illegal reposting, and he didn't get a single cent in copyright fees. But that video had also achieved an amazing influence on YouTube and must die. Foreign netizens exclaimed that this person had the mysterious power from the East. He didn't get any money, but he did get some fame. Just as Chen Guang was making fun of Wang Wu Taixing, there was a thump in the heavenly Holy Grail. A pencil more than 100 feet tall suddenly emerged from the sea of clouds, and then rose from the ground with the momentum of stabbing the sky. The second world in a cup was completed. It was the most useless world of pencil sharpening. The same video was blooming both at home and abroad. The fact that he was the best person on this planet at sharpening pencils had been recognized by the vast majority of people who knew about this. Naturally, it was completed. As the divine pencil statue rose from the sea of clouds, strands of power of faith gathered from the distant void. Chen Guang stood by the window of the hotel, with a cup in his hand. He gently took a sip of the fresh and spicy Longjing tea. He faced the morning sun, and was blown by the morning breeze. His style soared into the sky. He looked at the flickering power of faith, and was full of smugness. Today, brother has become a little stronger. Brother's painstaking efforts were not in vain. Although I can't earn a single cent from this online celebrity, it's worth it just for the sake of easily erecting a divine statue. He drank another mouthful of water, and entered the world in a cup. When he stood in the sea of clouds, he saw Liuli moving around the Ao Tua statue and the pencil statue. He saw that she was wrapped in fog, flying up and down very busy. Lord Liuli, I'm pretty awesome, right? I erected your divine statue while lying down. How are you going to reward me? Chen Guang was in a good mood and said happily. Unexpectedly, Liuli glared at him fiercely from high up in the sky. You still have the cheek to say that? Look at the second divine statue yourself. What the hell did you erect? Chen Guang was speechless. It's a pencil. Is there a problem? Idiot. Look clearly at the difference between the two divine statues yourself. If I were you, I'd find a piece of tofu and knock myself to death. What a disgrace. He didn't know what she was busy with, but she spoke as if she was shooting a gun. It was as if speaking one more sentence was tiring. Chen Guang could only look at it himself. Sure enough, it was extremely painful. It turned out that the power of faith attached to the divine pencil statue was really small and thin. Compared to the alto statue, it was very persistent. This was not surprising. There were not many people in the world who would deliberately practice sharpening pencils. It was even rarer to think of who was the best pencil sharpener in history. It was only because his video had some influence that he more or less got some power of faith. However, it probably didn't even reach 10 million people. Apart from that, these people's worship of his pencil sharpening skills was far less than their worship of the god of racing. The power of faith produced by the two, be it in quality or quantity, was completely different. Your second divine statue is filled with water. What's the use of having a basket? The power of faith isn't even 1,000th of the previous one. You're cheating me, right? Lord Liuli, who felt that she had been fooled, glared at him from afar in annoyance. Then, she ignored him and waved her hand again, forcing him out of the cup. Chen Guang was also embarrassed. How can you blame me for this? A mosquito's leg isn't meat? It's clearly you who gave it. The cup is too weak. Come to think of it, seeing how busy she was, he couldn't help but feel uneasy. Forget it. What will come sooner or later. No matter what she's doing, it won't kill me, right? He went out and went downstairs. He printed the long article he wrote last night into a book, and made a few copies. He held it in his hand, and went straight to the provincial hospital. It was time to let Su Lijing know how powerful he was. Even if I'm an ant, as long as the poison is strong, I can still bite you until you swell up. Chapter 390. Xiao Deng. Xiaoren said you sat in this ward for the whole day yesterday. When did the relationship between you two become this good? How come I didn't know about it? In Wang Ren's ward, a hale and hearty old man was chatting casually as he put the peeled crystal pear that his assistant brought to him into his mouth. He chewed lightly, and it was crunchy. This old man was Su Lijing. He was 65 this year, but he didn't look that old. He had a head of short white hair, and there weren't many wrinkles on his square face. His eyes were especially cold, unlike the muddy eyes of an ordinary old man. After being asked a simple question, Deng Xinghua, the vice principal of Jinhuan Academy, shivered. He laughed and said, Elder Su, isn't it a holiday? There aren't many things to do in school. I saw that Xiao Wang's injury was quite serious. Since I have nothing to do, and I live close to here, I came to see if there was anything I could do to help. So what if I have nothing to do? You, the vice principal, are quite free. Su Lijing glanced at him, and didn't say anything else. Deng Xinghua saw that Su Lijing didn't ask anymore, and he was annoyed. Xiao Zhou already said that Chen Guang was coming to apologize to Wang Ren. if when Chen Guang apologized, a leader of the academy was here to say something, and the words passed from Wang Ren's mouth to Su Lijing's ears, the vice principal would definitely look at him differently. Yesterday, he used his thick skin to force old Tong to leave, but he waited for a whole day, and he didn't even see a shadow of him. When he went back to ask, Xiao Zhou almost cried from scolding him, and he said that Chen Guang said it would be tomorrow or the day after. Therefore, Deng Xinghua came early in the morning, and he was even more friendly than Wang Ren's wife. He didn't expect that Chen Guang didn't wait for him, but Su Lijing, the mysterious big shot, also came today. Wang Ren helped Deng Xinghua's real friend to take credit, and he said that Deng Xinghua also stayed in the ward for a whole day yesterday. Dad, brother Deng specially came over to accompany me. Don't say that about him. Wang Ren saw that Deng Xinghua was inexplicably reprimanded, so he quickly spoke up for him. Unexpectedly, Su Lijing's face stiffened. Call me uncle. Deng Xinghua, who was at the side, was extremely embarrassed. This was a secret that everyone in the world knew, but Su Lijing always liked to cover it up. It made him, an outsider, feel very uncomfortable. Oh yes, uncle. By the way, has that Chen Guang been fired yet? Why didn't you tell him to get lost? Wang Ren suddenly said, That bastard. Last time at the Jianhuan Academy, I tolerated him and let him do as he pleased. But this time, he beat me up like this. Uncle, you have to help me. Su Lijing's expression turned cold again. Deng Xinghua, who was next to him, also looked at him eagerly. In fact, as long as he said the word, even if it was summer vacation, Deng Xinghua would definitely be the first to jump out and kick Chen Guang out of the school. Make decisions? I've already made a decision for you. Didn't you promise me when I asked you to go to the Institute of Chemical Engineering? Look at what you've done. If you want young girls, don't the Dechuan Academy of Fine Arts and the Music Institute have them? Isn't it better to be younger and prettier? Is your brain filled with shit? Why do you have to cause trouble for me in school? Su Lijing was furious and slammed the table. He was also angry. 2 days ago, Wang Ren had beaten up a student and sent him to the hospital. He hadn't even arrived at the hospital to see the situation, but Wu Shan had already called him. Just like what Wu Shan said, it was not easy to make Su Lijing give in on this matter. But in the end, Su Lijing gave Wu Shan face. In the end, he found out that Wang Ren was beaten up to the point that his face was almost disfigured. It took him a lot of effort to suppress the anger in his heart, but Wang Ren brought it up again in front of Deng Xinghua, an outsider. Wang Ren was inexplicably scolded. In his impression, this uncle of his was not like this before. He clearly told him to let Chen Guang go for the time being, and start with other people first. Today, he wanted to take advantage of Deng Xinghua's presence to settle the matter in one go. Why did he get angry? Elder Su, please don't be angry. I know about Xiao Wang's matter. It's not like what the rumors say. It's just people who are jealous of his ability to work and spread rumors. Xiao Wang went to the Institute of Chemical Engineering to work diligently. He is strict with the management of the equipment, and is definitely not like what the rumors say. I've seen Chen Guang's student before. He has a violent temper, and has a criminal record of beating people in school. It's not an exaggeration to say that he is notorious. It must be Xiao Wang who asked them to strictly follow the procedures when they wanted to borrow the equipment. This made Chen Guang feel that he had lost face. Everyone saw what happened that day. It was that northeastern girl called Hua Ling who started the fight. After Chen Guang came, Xiao Wang didn't even say a few words before he was beaten up and laid down here. Elder Su, you can't blame Xiao Wang wrongly. Deng Xinghua saw Su Lijing was angry, so he braced himself and stood up to help Wang Ren. He never thought that Su Lijing would really believe it. When Wu Shan negotiated with him, he didn't talk about too many details. Wu Shan didn't care what Wang Ren said or did to Zhongyu. He only wanted to discuss the conditions with Su Lijing. He will protect Chen Guang. So Su Lijing actually didn't know the cause and effect of the matter. A few days ago, when Wang Ren was admitted to the hospital, he came to see him and made some arrangements. Today was the first time he talked about this matter. Su Lijing replied, That's true. That student called Chen Guang was too aggressive. But I have my own plans for this matter. You don't need to ask anymore. Deng Xinghua also raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect that Su Lijing would accept his nonsense. Old man, you really don't know what's going on. I was just pretending to be kind. Why did you believe me? Even though Deng Xinghua had always been thick-skinned, he still felt his face turn red. It was no wonder. Not many people would dare to talk bad about Wang Ren in front of Su Lijing. Don't think that Su Lijing didn't just scold Wang Ren in front of him. In the past, when did this prince of the opposite sex get into trouble? Didn't this old man order someone to clean up after him? After all, he was his own flesh and blood, his only son. Even if his bones were broken, his tendons were still connected. That's right. Uncle, look at my nose. I don't even know if it will grow back. Wang Ren pointed at his nose and said, I can't take this lying down. All right, I have my own arrangements. After you leave the hospital, don't go back to school. I will arrange another job for you. Xiao Deng, come out for a while. I have some things to ask you about the school. Su Lijing stood up. Deng Xinghua followed him out with his head drooping. Su Lijing turned around and looked at him coldly. He took a deep breath and said, Xiao Deng, I understand your work ability. When I arranged for Xiao Run to go to the building loop school, I hoped that you would bring him to the right path. You have disappointed me. Well, not only did I fail to flatter him, I even became the emperor's slanderous villain. Deng Xinghua felt wronged and helpless at the same time. What kind of person is Wang Ren? It's not like he became like this after coming to the building loop school. How can you blame me for this? It's you who spoiled him too much. That's why he became so lawless. Even I, the vice dean, have to follow behind him and flatter him. If I had a choice, I would also want to be a righteous person, okay? Even if his heart was about to vomit blood, Deng Xinghua didn't dare to refute. He could only nod and bow. It's my fault. I will have a good talk with Xiao Wang in the future. At this moment, Vice Dean Deng suddenly saw a figure behind Su Lijing. His eyes suddenly lit up. The person who apologized had finally come. Chen Guang, you finally came. Deng Xinghua said loudly with joy. Su Lijing turned around and saw Chen Guang standing behind him. Chen Guang also raised his eyes to look at the old man before him. Even without Vice Principal Deng's introduction, he could tell that this old man was the vice principal of the Su University, who had brought Wang Run into the school's tumor. You are Chen Guang? Su Lijing frowned and looked down at Chen Guang. He suppressed his anger. These days he had heard the student's name many times. He really didn't expect that he would dare to appear in front of him. Even if Wu Shan is willing to speak up for you, you are still a junior. You are too arrogant. Chen Guang didn't care about Su Lijing's scrutinizing gaze. He copied him and looked at the vice dean with a scrutinizing gaze. From this person, Chen Guang felt a pressure that he hadn't felt for a long time. It was even more oppressive than when Wu Shan came and went in a hurry. Immersed in learning all year round and holding power, Su Lijing had the aura of a person in a high position. He didn't need to say too much. A simple expression, a frown, and a focused gaze could make Xiao Xiaoxin feel fear. However, no matter how high your position is, or how many things you have done, the Su Lijing I know is only Wang Ren's backing. That's all. He suddenly grinned. You are Vice Dean Su? I have long heard of your name. Today, you really live up to your reputation. Su Lijing frowned even more. Obviously, he didn't hear a trace of respect or fear from Chen Guang's tone. This was completely different from his impression of a student. The vice dean of a university was a completely different concept from the principal of a junior high school. Moreover, this was Gokyo University, one of the top 10 universities in the country. The older one grew, the more they understood the power of power. Didn't Wu Shan teach him how to be a proper person? Did he really think that Su Lijing was a pushover that could be easily bullied? Didn't your parents teach you to respect your teachers? Su Lijing's face turned cold as he spoke again. Chen Guang smiled again. They did. I understand that it is natural to respect one's teachers, but they also taught me that some teachers don't need to be respectful. Although Su Lijing was an elder, his impression of Chen Guang was extremely bad before they met. Now, he had only said one sentence, And he was already talking in such a tone that he even brought up Chen Guang's parents. Who the hell would be polite to him? You. Su Lijing was instantly enraged. Deng Xingguo saw that the situation wasn't looking good. So he quickly came over and patted Chen Guang's back, trying to push his head down. Elder Su, you misunderstood. The day before yesterday, Chen Guang told his form teacher, Teacher Zhou, that he felt guilty for hurting little Wang. So he specially came over to apologize. Chapter 391. He's here to apologize. Su Lijing, who was about to lose his temper, raised his eyebrows and looked at Chen Guang's dissatisfied face. He doesn't look like he's going to apologize. Deng Xingguo pressed twice, but Chen Guang's head didn't move. Deputy Dean Deng, let go. You can't press my head down. What are you here for? Su Lijing gradually became vigilant. He made a slight gesture behind his back, and the two men in black who had been standing at the door gradually moved forward. These two men had the aura of a soldier. As a member of the central think tank, Su Lijing was indeed equipped with military bodyguards. He knew that this young man had a bad temper and was very good at fighting. Su Lijing was an old man, of course. He couldn't compete with the young man in physical strength. No matter how much power he had, he could still be knocked down with one punch. Seeing this, how could Chen Guang not understand what Su Lijing was thinking? Didn't Deputy Dean Deng say that I'm here to apologize? Facing the two approaching military bodyguards, Chen Guang's expression didn't change. Su Lijing hesitated again. He thought, maybe this kid was warned by Wu Shan. Although I let him go this time, he still wants to ease the relationship. Therefore, his current unconvinced appearance was only due to his unwillingness to accept it. No wonder, no matter how rebellious a brat was, he would still have to listen to the words of an adult, right? Thinking of this, Su Lijing's old face showed a slight smile. Really? Well, I've received your apology. You can go now. Chen Guang shook his head. I hit Wang Run. If I want to apologize, of course I have to apologize in front of him. Deputy Dean Su, how can you accept it on his behalf? I didn't even convey my sincerity. It's the same if you convey it to me. You can go now. No matter what, Chen Guang insisted on entering the ward. Su Lijing began to be vigilant. Could it be that this kid wanted to break into the ward and hurt Wang Ren? In fact, Su Lijing guessed wrong. Although Chen Guang wanted to strangle Wang Ren, he was not stupid. He knew what awaited him if he really did that. He had to go in because he had to tell Wang Ren and Su Lijing about what he had in his hands. That was the best way to achieve the best effect. At this time, Deng Xingguo also realized that the situation was not right. In his heart, he was cursing little Zhou to death. UF** King managed to convince me? F***CK. If you haven't settled it, you should have told me earlier. Why did I get involved in this mess? Am I not asking for trouble? Deng Xingguo grabbed Chen Guang's hand from the side and tried to pull him away. Chen Guang, are you done? Elder Su asked you to leave. So why aren't you leaving? Chen Guang turned his head and looked at Deng Xingguo. No matter what, you are the vice dean of our Jianhuan Academy, right? Even a dog should have some self-respect, right? How could you say that? Without waiting for Deng Xingguo's expression to change, Su Lijing shouted, Chen Guang, think about it carefully. Who are you? If you are not Wu Shan, why are you standing here talking to me? Don't think that just because I agreed to let you go, you don't know what's good for you. Wu Shan's face is not that useful. Chen Guang was confused. Didn't Uncle Wu communicate with you? Communicate with what? This time, it was Su Lijing's turn to be confused. Chen Guang suddenly understood. For a moment, he didn't know what to think. He thought that after Wu Shan heard his statement, he would immediately contact Su Lijing to clear his name. But in the end, he didn't do anything. Forget it. You have already apologized. You can leave now. Su Lijing waved his hand and ordered them to leave. The two military bodyguards understood and suddenly rushed forward. They each reached out and wanted to grab Chen Guang's shoulders and throw him out. Chen Guang hadn't achieved his goal today. How could he throw him away so easily? He originally wanted to talk nicely, but he didn't expect that he still had to fight. After stuffing the printed books into his trouser pocket, Chen Guang immediately made his move. His left and right fists punched the chest of the two military bodyguards at the same time. The two of them were quiet and didn't show their abilities. However, since they were sent to be Su Lijing's bodyguards, they obviously had some real skills. The two of them looked disdainful. They didn't dodge, but both of them locked their hands in front of them. They planned to grab Chen Guang's fists. However, they didn't expect a huge force to come. How could the two of them hold Chen Guang's arms? Chen Guang's fists shook off the two's hands and landed on their chests. The two of them let out a muffled groan. They felt that their chests were so tight that the air in their lungs was almost sucked out by Chen Guang's punch. The two of them retreated at the same time and hit the wall of the hospital. The two professional soldiers endured the discomfort in their bodies and immediately wanted to grab their guns. Su Lijing saw that the situation wasn't looking good and quickly shouted, "Enough! Stop." He was very clear about the standards of his two bodyguards. They weren't just there for show. They were the real elites. However, under Chen Guang's fists, the two elite bodyguards couldn't even withstand a single move. They were both knocked back with a muffled groan. This was a junior that Wu Shan thought highly of. He didn't even hesitate to fall out with Su Lijing because of this person. Although Wu Shan said that this person was a friend of his daughter, Wu Tong, Su Lijing, who was also in a high position, didn't believe Wu Shan's words at all. For your daughter's friend, not your son-in-law, you actually want to fight me to the death. There must be something fishy going on. Only a ghost would believe that. He had long heard that the grandson of a real big shot in the military was studying at Gokyo University. Su Lijing had been asking around for 3 years, but to no avail. The big shot in the military hid this matter very well. Now it seemed that Chen Guang was very likely that person's grandson. Otherwise, there was no reason for Wu Shan to think so highly of him. Wu Shan was even willing to give up his own wife and child. He was definitely not a man of character. He must be plotting something. If Su Lijing had some doubts before, now that he saw Chen Guang force the two bodyguards to retreat and recalled his arrogant attitude from the beginning, how could Su Lijing not panic? He remembered something else. Right, Su Lijing had heard someone talk about that young man by chance. It was said that he had a great ambition at a young age. He didn't want to be a soldier like his grandfather, nor did he want to be in the economy like his grandfather. Instead, he was especially interested in environmental protection. Gokyo University, environmental science major. That's right, it's Chen Guang. No wonder he was a big shot in the academic world. His brain was really good. In a split second, Su Lijing's mind went through countless thoughts. He finally made up his mind. He was so scared that he almost broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't dare to let the two bodyguards pull out their guns. If that person knew that his grandson was being held at gunpoint by his own bodyguards, even 10 Su Lijings wouldn't be enough. Not only did Su Lijing's sudden eruption startle the two bodyguards, but even Chen Guang couldn't react in time. Little Chen. Sure enough, heroes come from the young. Your kung fu really opened this old man's eyes. You're indeed a tiger from a family of generals. Even if you're not a soldier, you must have trained a lot since you were young, right? A person's potential was really forced out. Su Lijing's old body was extremely agile as he stood between Chen Guang and the two bodyguards. His face instantly changed into a bright smile. He patted Chen Guang's shoulder and said with a smile. This sudden change in the situation really made people scratch their heads in confusion. At this moment, Chen Guang's face was also covered in a dumbfounded expression. When he saw the two bodyguards trying to pull out their guns, he became bold and decided to make the first move. He intended to take the two of them down and seize their weapons to cripple their resistance. If there's a need, he would even point a gun at Su Lijing's head to let him know that he's playing with his life today. But in the end, what happened? Did this old guy take the wrong medicine? I originally planned to play with my life on the line. Where did your amiable look come from? Your face-changing technique is so skillful that I can't look straight at it. The world is changing too fast, and I can't keep up with the rhythm. What the hell is a tiger from a family of generals? Logically speaking, my dad was indeed a soldier. If the cook squad leader can also be considered a general, Then I'm indeed a tiger from a family of generals. Seeing that Chen Guang was stunned, Su Lijing thought that he had guessed correctly and was very proud of himself. In the huge Sichuan province, dozens of people with the same status as him knew that the kid was hiding his identity and studying in Gokyo University. They all racked their brains to dig him out, and only hoped that from now on, they would exhaust their wisdom to hug a thigh. But these people all had no way to hug a thigh, and now he had unexpectedly caught him. No wonder this kid was so reckless and fearless. You can indeed be fearless. In the whole country, there are not many people who can make you fear. If there are, then most of them must be in Yanjing City. In Wujing City, you should be able to do whatever you want. To be able to dig you out from the tens of thousands of students in Gokyo University, Wang Ren's beating was worth it. Vice Principal Su, please excuse me. Then can I go and apologize to Wang Ren now? Although Chen Guang didn't understand what had happened, he still decided to act according to the original plan. He couldn't be dragged into the ditch by this old guy's unconventional way of doing things. Hey, what are you apologizing for, little Chen? Let me tell you, Xiaoren deserved to be beaten. You did a good job. It's already a good thing that you didn't kill him. Su Lijing was still smiling. As he spoke, he continued to pat Chen Guang's shoulder intimately. His eyes were extremely ambiguous as if to say, you know, I also know. F***CK. Old sir, please show some respect. I was planning to send your son to prison, but your attitude is making it very difficult for me to do that. Chen Guang was really speechless. He clearly came here with the urge to chop someone up. Although the first half of the story was very intense, it was still under his control. Suddenly the style changed. The old man couldn't accept it. How am I going to finish acting cool like this? Moreover, I'm about 40 years younger than you. You keep calling me little Chen and patting me on the shoulder as if you're an equal. I really wonder if you're trying to sugarcoat me. Vice Principal Su, I have something here. You can take a look first. I can contact a friend. He's very influential on Weibo and has more than 4 million fans. If you don't take back the punishment that you gave to Teacher Zhua, Senior Hualing, and Senior Zhongyu, I'll let him. As Chen Guang spoke, he took out the booklet that he had prepared earlier. Chapter 392. Frankly speaking, Su Lijing's sudden change had indeed caused Chen Guang to be at a loss, so he had taken out the things in advance. Apart from that, he felt that his threats were not imposing at all. It sounded like he wanted to discuss things with him. The moment the words left his mouth, old Master Guang regretted it. This wasn't the effect I wanted. I should have slapped one long article on Wang Ren's face first, then turned around and slapped the other one on Su Lijing's face. You old dog. Look at all the crap your son has done. It is because of your connivance and protection that this sinful bastard poisoned my school, killed my classmates, and forced my teachers to do what they wanted. If you don't take back your orders, I'll definitely fight you to the death and ruin your reputation with this scoundrel of a son. Then I'll ask for sky-high prices and pay back on the spot. Now I've completely lost my imposing manner. But before he could finish speaking, Su Lijing had already snatched the booklet away and started reading with a frown, not giving him a chance to incite his anger. Su Lijing read very quickly. He read 10 lines at a glance, but he could read every word clearly. Deng Xinghua also leaned over to take a look. Su Lijing turned his head and glared at him. Deng Xinghua shrank his neck and hid behind the booklet. Right now this vice president was also feeling very conflicted. His outlook on life must have suffered quite a big blow. About a few minutes later, Su Lijing finished reading Chen Guang's long article that was stained with blood and tears. Chen Guang stared at him and paused. He felt that he couldn't be fooled by this Maitreya Buddha image. He still had to say what needed to be said. He coughed lightly. Vice President Su, you've read it clearly, right? Everything I've written in this article is true. You know everything that Wang Ren has done in school all these years, right? He thought that Su Lijing would quibble, but this old man paused for a moment and looked at him with a very complicated gaze. I know. Now is the time. This opportunity couldn't be missed. He couldn't be fooled by this old man's sugar-coated bullets. Fire. Su Lijing. Chen Guang suddenly raised his voice and said heavily, "It's because of you, Su Lijing, that this black sheep Wang Run can act like a tyrant in the school. Using the power in his hands, he coerces students, asks for bribes, and often uses the excuse of expulsion to force girls to submit. What's more, his lust was unquenchable. Whenever he saw a beautiful woman, he would be extremely bold. He would either suppress or force them. Once they refused to submit to him, he would make it difficult for them to move forward in school. A dignified university, a place to nurture the pillars of the country, had become Wang Ren's harem. Their learning is corrupted, and their morals are no longer what they used to be. Even the leaders of the academy have become people like Deng Xinghua, who fawns on the rich and powerful and flatters them. As a scholar, you should have taken the responsibility of researching knowledge as your duty, but you planted a son in the school and allowed him to do whatever he wanted. What do you take the school for? Where do you place the 40,000 teachers and students in the school? Do you have any sense of shame on your old face? Are you worthy of the country's trust in you? How could he live up to his reputation as a scholar? How could he live up to his position as the vice principal? In the end, Chen Guang did not bring out the 3 bombshells of Ding Lu, the young nurse, and the student who was beaten into a vegetative state. These 3 matters were the final hammer that he planned to use to send Wang Ren to hell. If he exposed them in advance, Su Lijing would be prepared for it. He did not say it now, because he wanted to pretend that he did not know anything in front of Su Lijing to reduce his vigilance. Su Lijing was scolded so harshly that he was momentarily stunned. He looked at Chen Guang in a daze. He thought to himself, how could a prince with such a high status purposely inquire so much about Wang Ren and stand in front of me to scold me? Could it be that the higher-ups were already dissatisfied with this matter? But they thought of the practical things I've done all these years and the contributions I've made. So they didn't want to reprimand me in person. So they simply sent a junior to remind me? Deng Xinghua, who was at the side, did not know what Su Lijing was thinking about. He was completely shocked by Chen Guang's scolding and quickly jumped out. Chen Guang, shut up. How could you be like this to Su? Vice Dean Deng was only halfway through his sentence when Su Lijing turned around and fiercely slapped his face. Deng Xinghua, Wang Ren has become more and more impudent in Jianhuan Academy all these years. And it's all because of your scoundrel friend. You shut up. Get lost. Deng Xinghua was in pain from this slap. He did not understand what was going on, but he felt a chill in his heart when he saw Su Lijing's eyes that looked like he wanted to eat someone. Everything was done by Wang Ren, and I only cleaned up his mess under your suggestion. Why does it sound like I'm the main culprit from your tone? This is not good, right? I can't accept this. But no matter how dissatisfied he was, Deng Xinghua did not dare to say a word of rebuttal. Chen Guang only looked at Su Lijing's performance coldly. He knew that Deng Xinghua's slap was for nothing, and he also knew that Su Lijing might be deliberately shirking responsibility. What kind of joke is this? One Deng Xinghua dared to make Wang Ren so crazy? Is it possible? Aren't you the one he's really relying on, Elder Su? Get lost. Su Lijing shouted at Deng Xinghua again. Deng Xinghua knew that he could not stay here any longer, so he quickly shrank his neck and ran away. When this person was far away, Su Lijing turned around and looked at Chen Guang. I know I was wrong. Huh. Chen Guang was at a loss again. This person was too straightforward, wasn't he? I will reflect on this matter. And I will also make Xiaoren reflect on his mistakes behind closed doors. Thank you, little Chen, for reminding me. Actually, other than the things you wrote on the list, there are other things that I know that you should be clear about. You didn't say it, because you didn't want to make things too difficult for me. I understand. As for how Zhuo Jingxi and the others will be dealt with, I will inform them. Anyway, thank you. Su Lijing looked at Chen Guang, his attitude extremely sincere. Reflect. That's it. Chen Guang felt a chill in his heart when he heard this. The things that Su Lijing said he didn't say were probably referring to the misfortune of Ding Lu and the others. 2 lives, a young man's life, and so many staff members of the academy, who had been corrupted by Wang Ren's methods of profit or coercion. Students who were supposed to be the pride of the heavens had been ruined by your good son for the rest of their lives. Is that all you have to say is reflect on your mistakes? Is that all you have to do is reflect on your mistakes behind closed doors? Su Lijing, the look of repentance on your face not only doesn't make me happy, but it also makes me especially disappointed. Do you know how many people your son has ruined? I don't approve of only reflecting and reflecting on his mistakes. Shouldn't he receive the punishment he deserves? This kind of person, it wouldn't be too much to feed him a bullet, right? I think that Wang Ren should go to jail, Chen Guang said tentatively. Su Lijing was stunned. He stared at Chen Guang for a long time. That can't be right? Chen Guang suddenly laughed. You really think so? Chapter 393. Su Lijing was creeped out by Chen Guang's smile. But he was wary of Chen Guang's identity as a tiger from a family of generals. So he did not know how to answer him. No matter what, I'm considered a meritorious official, right? It's wrong to indulge the younger generation. But it didn't cause too much damage. Chen Guang suddenly felt that he had nothing to say to this person. Even though Wu Shan was a typical official, at least he still had justice in his heart. Su Lijing, on the other hand, stood at the other extreme. He and Su Lijing had different goals, and could not work together. Forget it, I'll just take care of the rest one by one. Why waste my breath on Su Lijing? Anyway, I've achieved my goal, haven't I? Fine, I won't argue with you. That's it. Just now, you said that you'd better cancel the punishment for my teacher and classmate. Chen Guang threw down this sentence, and prepared to leave. At that moment, the ward door suddenly opened. Wang Ren seemed to have heard the commotion outside. He did not seem to understand the situation. Earlier, when he was alone, he heard Chen Guang's voice. He remembered that Deng Xingua vaguely mentioned that Chen Guang was coming to apologize. Therefore, he could not sit still on the bed. He hated Chen Guang to the core. If he had the chance, he wanted to step on Chen Guang's face. Now you actually came to me? How can I let you go just like that? Even though Wang Ren could not understand why Su Lijing refused to agree to his request to fire Chen Guang, but since that brat came to ask for a beating, it was not too much for him to go out and vent his anger, right? Therefore, he opened the door and saw Chen Guang. He used about 5 seconds to organize his words and decide on his next move. Chen Guang! He grinned and shouted Chen Guang's name. He raised his hand and wanted to give this thorn in his flesh a tight slap. His hand was raised in midair. But Chen Guang had already turned around and looked at him coldly. Wang Ren thought. You came to apologize without any sincerity. What do you mean by that look? Aren't you quite capable? If you have the guts, why don't you make a move now? Do you dare to make a move in front of my dad's bodyguards? No matter how good you are at fighting, can you beat the bodyguards sent by the army? Wang Ren was so excited that he raised his hand higher and higher. His chest was filled with anger and hot blood. Now you know to apologize? Too late. I will kick you out of the school first, and then crush you to death bit by bit. Then, he waved his hand, completely not noticing that Su Lijing's face had turned pale. Nor did he notice that Chen Guang was staring at him, as if he was looking at a dead fish. He also didn't notice that the 2 military bodyguards he was relying on didn't dare to look at Chen Guang from beginning to end. In the end, his hand didn't hit Chen Guang's face. Instead, he felt a dull pain in his chest. Then, his fat body flew in the direction of the ward's door. And then he fell hard into the ward. His back hit the floor cabinet, making a loud noise. Then, there was a series of cracking sounds on his back. He didn't know which bone was broken. Wang Ren used a little strength to stand up, but there was a heart-wrenching pain in his back. He couldn't move. He wailed. Chen Guang slowly retracted his foot that was in midair, turned around to look at Su Lijing and shrugged. You can't blame me for this. The expressions on Su Lijing's face were too colorful. There was anger, confusion, panic, and perhaps a trace of unwillingness. Chen Guang thought he would be furious, but instead he took a deep breath. It's okay. Good kick. Shaoran deserves it. At that moment, a man in military uniform suddenly stepped out of the elevator. He stared and saw the 2 military bodyguards standing beside Su Lijing. He said loudly, Zhao Hu, why did you two send a distress signal for no reason? I was busy here, and I was the closest to you, so I threw it over. This Zhao, who was one of Su Lijing's bodyguards. He looked at the newcomer with a bitter face. Captain Xue, it's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding. This person was Xue Lin. She knew Su Lijing. She first nodded at him. Greetings, Elder Su. At that moment, Chen Guang turned around. Xue Lin turned her head and saw him. Brother Chen Guang? Why are you here? Huh. Chen Guang glanced at Xue Lin. His mind was a mess. He seemed to have seen this person before, but he couldn't remember his name. Who are you? I'm Xue Lin. Did you guys just fight? No wonder Zhao Hu sent a distress signal in a panic. These two people are still alive. Thank God. Last time when he exchanged blows with Chen Guang, Xue Lin was defeated without any resistance. He admired the strong the most. Now his tone was naturally filled with respect and some joy. Chen Guang impatiently waved his hand and turned to leave. Don't bother me. I'm not in a good mood. It was rare for Xue Lin to block Chen Guang. How could she let him go so easily? Brother Chen Guang, wait a minute. I want to learn inner force. Chen Guang suddenly turned his head. His Qilin arm attacked. He punched Xue Lin's stomach. This white-faced guy was caught off guard. He was hit by Chen Guang's punch. He covered his stomach and squatted down. How could he keep up with Chen Guang? After punching him again, Chen Guang was in a good mood. He really couldn't stand Su Lijing's attitude of, we are the superior. My men ride on the heads of the commoners, and it's natural for them to do whatever they want. But don't hit a smiling face. Su Lijing suddenly lowered his stance. His fist really couldn't hit his old face. He was an old man after all. Now that someone had delivered himself to his doorstep to be beaten up, he could at least vent the pent-up anger in his heart. Instantly he felt much better. Xue Lin held her stomach and squatted on the ground for 3 minutes. With Zhao Hu's help, she stood up shakily. Damn it! I might have internal injuries. Captain Xue, who is this guy? He even dares to hit you? Zhao Hu was also from Xue Lin's Special Forces team. He was clear about the captain's ability. He had never seen him knocked down with one punch. Just now the two of them easily knocked him down. But how could Captain Xue be so weak in front of him? Xue Lin glared at him. You came out to be a bodyguard. Have you forgotten the military discipline? Who told you to ask so many questions? Then, Xue Lin said goodbye to Su Lijing, turned around, and rushed down the stairs. Today, Senior Captain Xue had once again received the teachings of a folk master. He firmly believed that as long as he didn't give up, sooner or later, he would be able to move this master to introduce an inner force master to him. Seeing how Xue Lin cared about Chen Guang so much, Su Lijing's back was almost soaked in cold sweat. This time there's really no escape. Luckily I reacted in time. Otherwise my life's work would be ruined. That was close. He quickly took out his phone. No matter what, he had to coax the person first. As for Wang Run, who was injured on top of his injuries, he was in a mess again. At that moment, Su Lijing still didn't know that he and Chen Guang were actually not the same type of person. He might be barely considered a superior, but Chen Guang put himself in the position of a civilian. He didn't accept Su Lijing's so-called reflection and closed-door reflection. If one only needed to reflect on their mistakes and didn't have to pay any price, then what was the use of the law? Although he always heard that the law was a toy of those in power, Chen Guang didn't agree with it. On the other side, Chen Guang received a call from Zhuo Jingxi before he even reached the hotel parking lot. Her mood was a little complicated. The punishment that was already set in stone was inexplicably revoked. She didn't know what exactly Chen Guang did, but she was sure that it had something to do with him. Chen Guang laughed it off with her. He only said that the heavenly secrets couldn't be revealed, and that he would tell her in detail when he came back. On the other side, Hualing and Zhongyu also called one after another. Both of their punishments were cancelled for no reason. Chen Guang just chuckled, with a look that said, I'm awesome, come and worship me. As soon as Chen Guang returned to school, he was immediately stopped by Zhuo Jingxi, Hualing, and Zhongyu. The three girls dragged him to the Qingye pavilion outside the school. Zhuo Jingxi acted as the host and rewarded him while interrogating him. Although Zhuo Jingxi had already accepted her fate to go abroad, and was even willing to accept Chen Guang's sponsorship if she could stay in school and stay in old Madame Xu's laboratory, she still wasn't willing to leave. It wasn't that Zhuo Jingxi didn't want to go abroad to study. As Chen Guang saw and old Madame Xu said, the old madam's health was deteriorating. She was very grateful to Zhuo Jingxi. No matter what, Zhuo Jingxi was more willing to stay by Xu Lirong's side. She hoped to be able to produce results as soon as possible before the old madam completely collapsed. Let me tell you, at that time, I stood in front of that old man Su Lijing and slapped this thing on Su Lijing's face for him to see. After he saw it, he was ashamed and embarrassed. I said that he didn't dare to say anything. I called him an old thief and said that he had no sense of shame. He didn't even dare to fart on his face. He nodded his head like a chicken pecking at rice and said that he would immediately withdraw the punishment. Not even 5 minutes after I turned around and left, your calls came one after another. Chen Guang laughed mischievously. Bah! We've heard of Su Lijing countless times. How could he be as weak as you say? Fine, I know you're afraid that we'll feel sorry for him. How much money did you spend? Tell me. Zhuo Jingxi rolled her eyes at him. How much money could he have? Zhong Yu picked up a piece of twice-cooked pork with her chopsticks and sent it to Chen Guang's mouth. Come open your mouth, ah. Did you see Hualing's car when she moved over? Zhuo Jingxi was puzzled. A Passat. What's so great about it? Zhong Yu didn't understand. Zhuo Jingxi turned to look at Chen Guang. This is quite different from the Chen Guang I know. Chen Guang chewed on the twice-cooked pork that Zhong Yu fed him. He pouted and said, I explained to them that it was a phaeton, but they didn't believe me. Pfft, are you bullying me because I don't understand English? It's written so clearly that it's a Passat. Zhong Yu insisted. Zhuo Jingxi finally understood that this kid was trapped in his own trap. She could only laugh happily. She thought of the day when this kid was buying a car. He stared at the seller as if he wanted to eat her alive, and asked the 4S shop to change the logo. Now he's stupid. Chapter 394. Chen Guang rolled his eyes at Zhuo Jingxi's laughter and stopped struggling. He waved his hand and said, I really didn't spend any money, and I can't possibly compensate Su Lijing. He doesn't care about this bit of money, and I wouldn't do such a despicable thing. Also, I do have some connections that can protect me, but Su Lijing insisted that he wanted to vent his anger on you guys, so there's no room for negotiation. I really thought he was something. But after I went there, he was very tough and overbearing at first, and he had 2 bodyguards with him, looking cool and handsome. But I beat up his 2 bodyguards first, and he immediately chickened out. Then I kicked Wang Ren again, and that bastard's spine was probably broken. But Su Lijing said it was a good kick. It's not just you guys who don't understand. Even I don't know what's going on. Alright, no matter what, the result is a happy ending. So let's not care about the details. Zhong Yu patted the table. Come, let's have a toast to celebrate our General Chen's victory. At this moment Hualing, who had just finished reading the booklet, put down a few pieces of paper and looked up at Chen Guang. Why isn't there anything about little Lu in here? The atmosphere in the private room suddenly cooled down, although Hualing also knew that she shouldn't mention sad things when everyone was happy. This matter was stuck in her throat, and she had to get it out. Chen Guang first looked at everyone, then suddenly downed a large glass of wine. I didn't mention it now because I can't let Su Lijing be on guard. But this matter isn't over yet. Senior Hualing, when you all settle down, we'll go to Senior Ding Lu's hometown. This was another night of drinking with the 3 women, and Chen Guang was very tired. He divided them into 3 batches before he finally carried them all back to Zhuo Jingxi's house. Fortunately, it wasn't very far, but it wasn't completely without benefits. Towards Hualing and Zhong Yu, of course, he wouldn't act recklessly. But as for Zhuo Jingxi, he wasn't so polite. Anyway, he had already taken advantage of her. He worked hard as a porter, so shouldn't he get some benefits? Unfortunately, Hualing was now living in Zhuo Jingxi's house and occupying the living room. Even if he had the heart to kill the thief, he was powerless to do anything about it. All he could do was casually take advantage of her and return home with his tail between his legs. In fact, sometimes Chen Guang looked down on himself. Why can't I control my hands? To think that he trusted him so much that he could get drunk in front of him, without the slightest bit of vigilance. Weren't you testing the old man's character? I'm not kidding. I can't stand the test. The next morning, Zhuo Jingxi and the other two returned to the school's laboratory. Old Madame Xu had personally called to invite them. Luo Jin had arrived early. He didn't know what had happened. Inexplicably, the demerit punishment on his head was gone. He was also at a loss. When he received a call from Zhuo Jingxi informing him to come to the laboratory, he was even more confused. Teacher Zhuo, what's going on? Luo Jin was puzzled. The three girls looked at each other in unison. It was the straightforward Zheng Yu who said, "It's nothing. Senior brother Luo, just treat it as a dream." After saying that, the three girls went back to their own work. Because of Su Lijing, the experiment had been stopped for 2 days. There was a lot of backlog of work, and they were indeed very busy. Of course, it wasn't that they were so busy that they didn't have time to say a word. It was just that the three of them really didn't want to talk to Luo Jin. With Chen Guang as a mirror, there was no need to say much about Luo Jin's character. Luo Jin suddenly felt that he was no longer a person in this laboratory. He was not wrong. When the next semester started, Zhuo Jingxi really planned to change to another graduate student. In any case, there were already 3 girls in the laboratory, so she might as well change all of them to a female army. As for Chen Guang, he went to a tea house near Vice Principal Han's residential area. After sitting and waiting for a while, Guoming and Old Man Han arrived one after another. Guoming's eyes were filled with excitement. "Are you ready to move? I can do it any time." Old Man Han also suppressed his excitement. "I have been secretly asking around in the academy for the past few days. Many people are starting to get restless. I don't know what happened, but I heard that Deng Xinghua had offended Su Lijing. Yesterday, Old Tong and Principal Ke had an appointment for a long time. I guess this matter has something to do with Su Lijing. Also, why did Su Lijing suddenly revoke the punishment given to Xiao Zhua and the others? What else have you been doing these few days?" Chen Guang looked at the two extremely excited people. After thinking for a while, he still couldn't hide it from them. So he told them the truth about Wu Tong being sent away. As for the rest, he didn't need to explain it too clearly. It was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads. "Maybe the two of you have misunderstood. The Martial Arts Bureau wanted to do this with me, and let Wang Ren receive the punishment he deserved. However, the Martial Arts Bureau didn't seem to support it, and sent her away. But no matter what, I have made up my mind to do this. As for the two of you, I understand your difficulties. I can't be too selfish, and only care about myself. I can't be too selfish, and think about dragging you into this." Unknowingly, Chen Guang, a third-year student, didn't behave like a student in front of Old Man Han, a deputy dean, and Guoming, a former director, and now an executive of a listed company. Instead, he behaved like a peer. When the two heard this, they were silent for a long time. They looked at Chen Guang with some pain, as if they were thanking him for being honest with them. However, they also seemed to be regretting that they might have missed another good opportunity to take down Wang Ren and Su Lijing. Since they had already said this much, there was no point for Chen Guang to continue staying here. So he didn't stay any longer and got up to leave. Not long after he left the tea house, Wu Shan called again. "Xiao Chen, what did you say to Su Lijing?" "Today, after my meeting, he came to the entrance of the courtyard to invite me for tea. His words were strange." On the other end of the line, Wu Shan was extremely puzzled. "He keeps saying that I'm not honest, and that I'm guarding a mountain of gold and silver. I'm really confused by him. Have you guys settled the matter?" More or less, half of it has been settled. Chen Guang didn't quite understand what had happened either. "Haven't the punishments been revoked? What else do you want?" Wu Shan's tone was somewhat dissatisfied. He wanted to use his words to lecture Chen Guang again, but even Wu Tong wouldn't listen to him. Chen Guang was at most his junior, so it was even more impossible for him to listen to him. However, because Chen Guang wasn't that close to him, he couldn't contradict him like Wu Tong did. He only took a deep breath. "Uncle Wu, it's not that I want anything else, it's that justice needs to be done. Listen to me tell you 3 things. If you still insist that I should stop after listening, then I'll listen to you. Since you're Sister Wu Tong's father, I'll listen to you. After organizing his words in his mind, Chen Guang told Wu Shan about the three important things. They were about Ding Lu, the nurse, and the boy who was beaten into a vegetative state. As for the others, whether it was corrupting teachers and students, embezzling public funds, or even using his authority to steal meat from students, or using underhanded means to expel Guoming from the academy, they were all minor details. Wang Ren's actions were only unforgivable. Uncle Wu, everything I said is the truth. If there's even one thing that isn't true, I won't pursue it. Of course, from my personal standpoint, I'm just meddling in other people's business. But since I know about it, I can't just ignore it. To be honest, this kind of thing should be handled by someone with your position. However, I understand your difficulties, so I won't ask for your help. I only ask that you don't stop me. As Chen Guang spoke, he tightly grasped the heavenly Holy Grail in his hand. He was waiting for Wu Shan's answer. He really didn't want to be a saint, but Wang Ren appeared in front of him again and again. It was as if something was testing his character. He couldn't help but ask in his heart, Luli, are you testing my sense of justice? Is it true that only people with a righteous heart are qualified to become the owner of the heavenly Holy Grail? Don't think like that. The heavenly Holy Grail isn't that great. Unexpectedly, just as this thought came to his mind, Wu Shan was still silent, but Luli was now complaining in his heart. F***ck, can you give me some hints before you come out next time? Can you not scare me? Just like when you receive a message. It's not impossible. I can't be bothered. Fine, I'm afraid that you'll be stubborn. I just want to tell you to do whatever you want to do. Don't use me and the Holy Grail as a cover. Of course, things like temperament were indeed important. But he had only seen the spirit of heaven now. How was this relevant? There was still a difference of 108,000 miles. In short, the way you conduct yourself now can be summed up in one word. Just be a coward. Coward. Follow your heart. Follow your heart. In any case, do whatever you want to do. Don't leave any regrets in your heart. Let me put it this way. People who are always afraid of the slightest thing will sooner or later die on the path of the 3,000 worlds. Luli said very casually. Can you not talk about something as terrifying as death like it's a cabbage? Tell me secretly, how many redeemers have died before me? Luli chuckled. Not a single one. Because you're the first. Just like what you guys always say when you do experiments. You're a lab rat. You're the first user of one of the 10 great artifacts of the endless God realm. The heavenly Holy Grail. Isn't it very cool to think of it this way? Very proud. Frankly speaking, after you've passed the 3,000 worlds, other than saving me, what else will happen? I'm also very confused. Are you happy? Do you like this feeling of surprise when life is full of uncertainty? F***ck your sister. Chen Guang realized that ever since he boarded this pirate ship, his life had already collapsed by half. Now that he knew that he was a lab rat, it was equivalent to collapsing by another 25%. I really do have a good sister. But she's a dear, are you really interested? Let this lady introduce you to her? Luli chuckled. I'm not interested in big-breasted girls. You've been so mysterious lately. What exactly have you been busy with? I'm a little flustered. Chen Guang recalled Luli's busy look when the pencil statue was erected. If she didn't say something, he really couldn't feel at ease. I've already said that I have a big plan, don't worry about it. Anyway, you won't die for a while. F***ck. What do you mean won't die for a while? Don't be like this. You always have to make big news. This big brother is very tired of being a redeemer, okay? I can't be bothered with you, dog-biting Lu Dongbin. You don't know how to appreciate my kindness. Luli had always been impatient when talking to Chen Guang. She ran away after a few sentences, causing Chen Guang to grit his teeth in hatred. But there was nothing he could do. On the other side, Wu Shan finally made a decision. He took a deep breath and said heavily, to be honest, before you mentioned this to me, I didn't think that things would be this bad. Su Lijing is indeed a little too much. Then Uncle Wu, do you understand now? What do you think I should do? Chen Guang didn't want to argue with him anymore, so he asked straightforwardly, Chapter 395. Wu Shan pondered for a few seconds. If you can gather enough evidence and convince me, I'll personally contact the procuratorate for you. If it's just you, the procuratorate won't accept it. Wu Shan said. Although there may be a lot of hidden dangers, I can still handle it. But I won't let Wu Tong come back for a while. I don't want her to be involved in this matter, so don't talk to her. Chen Guang was overjoyed. Okay. Then. Thank you for your understanding. After hanging up the phone, Wu Shan leaned against the leather chair and closed his eyes for a long time. He then picked up the phone and dialed a number to briefly report his decision. Not long after, the other side replied with one word: approved. Wu Shan let out a long sigh of relief, and his eyes gradually became firm. His statement just now basically meant that Wu Shan was indeed going to go against Su Lijing. Perhaps he wasn't as righteous as he was before Chen Guang, but he still couldn't make up his mind to make enemies for no reason. After all, it's meaningless for him to kill all his enemies in one fell swoop. After all, with his identity and status, he couldn't do things as willful as Chen Guang. His every move had a lot of implications. But if Chen Guang had enough evidence, why not take this opportunity to get rid of Su Lijing? Su Lijing was a scholar who had turned to politics from the academic world. He and Wu Shan were not on the same mountain, and they had been competing against each other for a long time. Hidden under the surface was an everlasting undercurrent. Wu Shan felt that it was time to establish his power. Before the next election, he could take down Su Lijing to establish his power and improve his own status. Offending one group of people would naturally bring him closer to another group of people. He didn't need to explain these things to Chen Guang. After receiving Wu Shan's permission, Chen Guang immediately turned around and returned to the tea house. He briefly talked to Wu Shan and Guoming about his phone conversation with Wu Shan. Old Han and Guoming were worried, but in the blink of an eye, there was light at the end of the tunnel. Therefore, the three of them decided to split into 3 groups. Guoming set off to Danghai to contact the young nurse who was the victim. Old Man Han, on the other hand, made a trip in his private capacity and paid a visit to the family who lost their son. Chen Guang, on the other hand, was preparing to head to Ding Lu's hometown in the southeast province with Hualing. Once he decided to do it, he had to act at lightning speed. It caught Su Lijing off guard. When Chen Guang and Hualing arrived at Zhongsha City in southeast province, it was already the afternoon of the next day. They were so busy that Hualing did not even have time to move. That morning, Hualing was still groggy from last night's alcohol, so she dragged Chen Guang to the phaeton. Zhuo Jingxi had wanted to come as well, but she really couldn't leave the laboratory. Chen Guang also didn't suggest that she move. It wouldn't be good if Su Lijing's spies in the academy noticed anything unusual. I say, you 3 big sisters are too much. I won't say anything about getting drunk once. When I first arrived at the laboratory, I thought that I had entered womanland, but now I realize that the 3 of you are all drunkards. And his alcohol tolerance was especially bad. This is not womanland, this is Wine Fairy Grove. Chen Guang couldn't help but complain as he dragged Hualing, who had vomited so much that she could barely take care of herself, out of the car. Hualing put one hand on the telephone pole. Can you blame me? The ups and downs of life come too fast. Normal people can't stand it, right? Do you think everyone is as insensitive as you? The 2 of them rested for a while in Zhongsha City in southeast province, and then continued to Yanting County. Ding Lu's hometown was located in a rather remote mountain village in Yanting County. Unexpectedly, the highway from Zhongsha City to Yanting County was only half built. After getting off the highway, they turned into a provincial road. Now they were in trouble. Who would have thought that this provincial road could actually change Chen Guang's understanding of bad roads? Even the god of racing had to kneel on the ground and sing surrender when encountering this kind of muddy road. At this moment, Chen Guang only hated that he didn't buy a Wrangler SUV. Although the phaeton was good, it didn't have a lot of territory. Hualing, on the other hand, was calm. After the alcohol gradually dissipated, she became quite talkative. She pulled Chen Guang and bragged about all kinds of interesting things she had seen and heard in northeast China. When she was happy, she even sang a song. To be honest, Sister Hualing, your singing is no better than Deputy Director Han's. Chen Guang almost broke down because of Hualing. Hualing asked curiously, when have you ever heard Deputy Director Han sing? Forget it. I shouldn't have mentioned this to you. Chen Guang quietly turned on the car's stereo and played a classic song. He turned the volume up and managed to calm Hualing's broken voice. They had originally planned to drive to Yanting County before tonight, but because of the terrible road conditions, they finally arrived at Lingshan County, which was adjacent to Yanting County, when the sky was completely dark. It was about 40 kilometers away from their destination. The two discussed for a while and decided not to leave. They would continue their journey tomorrow morning and rush there through the night. On one hand, Chen Guang was too tired. On the other hand, Ding Lu's family was probably already asleep. There was no need to fight for half a day's time. The two had dinner together. When they checked into the hotel early, it was almost 8:30 at night. Hualing put one hand on the door of her room and deliberately put on a flirtatious look. She winked at Chen Guang. Little brother, I've been thinking about it. I think the Passat is not bad. It can barely be considered a BMW 3. Why don't you give me a chance to cry in the BMW? Look at this long night. It's not easy for the two of us to get together and come out for a walk. How can you let me sleep alone at night? As she said that, she proudly raised her eyebrows and licked her lips. They were quite familiar with each other now. Chen Guang was already quite familiar with her straightforward personality. He turned to look at her. I calculated with my fingers and found out that Sister Hualing's shoulders are wider than mine. Little Ko, I like the cute type. I really can't fall in love with you with thick eyebrows and big eyes. Bah. Tell me honestly, are you interested in Teacher Zhua? Hualing saw that her flirting didn't work and revealed her fox tail. It turned out that Zhong Yuehua and Hualing had long felt that Chen Guang and Zhua Jingxi were secretly flirting with each other. They thought that the two of them had an unusual teacher-student relationship. A woman's gossipy nature had awakened. Hualing couldn't help but want to test the waters while they were going out together. Chen Guang was shocked. How did you know? Damn, it's true. Hualing was also shocked. Damn, I've been tricked. I'm too lazy to talk to you. I'm going out for a walk. There's nothing going on between me and Teacher Zhua. Chen Guang turned and ran away. He couldn't stand the thick eyebrows, big eyes, and big waist of his senior sister's eyes that were burning with the spirit of gossip. Hey, where are you going? Hualing said anxiously at the door. Chen Guang waved his hand. I remember an acquaintance from Lingshan County. It's rare for me to come here, so I'm going to meet her. He really wasn't looking for an excuse. Fan Lingshan's family lived in Lingshan County. After confirming that he couldn't reach Yanting County tonight, he made up his mind to visit that family while he was here. Ever since the kidney transplant surgery, he hadn't contacted Fan Lingshan's family for more than a month. He didn't know how the aunt who donated the kidney was doing. He couldn't say that he didn't know how to be grateful after giving money to others. Money was just a worldly possession, and it couldn't compare to 1/10,000th of the kindness of a kidney donation. When the call went through, Fan Lingshan's voice on the other end sounded like she was crying. The fruit supplement bag that Chen Guang was holding fell to the ground with a thud. That aunt had just passed away. Chapter 396. After hanging up the phone, Fan Lingshan's sobbing voice still echoed in his ears. He really didn't expect that the auntie would be gone forever after not seeing her for a month. He wasn't that sad. After all, he had only met that auntie a few times and didn't even speak much to her. In order to get that auntie to donate her organs, Chen Guang even offered a sky-high price and gave her all the benefits he deserved. He didn't know her anything, but now that he knew that she had really passed away, Chen Guang only felt extremely disappointed. Compared to many people, the first half of his life wasn't that lucky. He was a second-generation rich kid, but his family suddenly went bankrupt and his mother fell seriously ill. But he was even luckier. At the most difficult time of his life, Luli descended from the sky with the heavenly Holy Grail. Although the divine emperor was very deceitful, he was still helping him while tricking him. In just 2 months, he had already turned over a new leaf. So compared to Fan Lingshan, his luck couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. The greatest pain in the world was when a child wanted to take care of himself, but his parents didn't. He had gone through all kinds of difficulties and dangers to save his mother's life in the end. But Fan Lingshan's mother's illness was different. Modern medicine hadn't reached the point where it was possible to replace a person's head, so there was no cure. He casually threw the fruits and supplements to the beggars by the roadside. He then bought a flower basket and wrapped a thick stack of cash in plain paper. Then, Chen Guang jogged back to the hotel. Before he left, he called Hua Ling and told her that he didn't know when he would be back at night. He told her to be careful and not to open the door easily. Then, Chen Guang started the car and headed straight for Three Saints Town, which was about 5 kilometers away from Lingshan County. Fan Lingshan's mother's morning hall was placed on the main street of the town. It could be seen about 200 to 300 meters away. Fan Lingshan knelt cross-legged in the morning hall with her head lowered. She gripped her phone tightly and sobbed from time to time. Her originally delicate and pretty face looked especially miserable because her eyes were red from crying. People kept talking in her ears. Fan Lingshan's eyes were a little numb, confused, and at a loss of what to do. In these 3 days, she had seen too many things that were beyond her knowledge. 3 days ago, after struggling for a long time, his mother finally ended her painful life. Fan Lingshan would always remember the words she said to her as she clutched her hand tightly before she died. No matter what others said, money you can't let go. He couldn't let go of a single cent. Even if you really want to help a relative in the future, at the very least, you can't say anything before you graduate from university. Fan Lingshan didn't quite understand why her mother would make such an arrangement. In her opinion, since her mother used her kidney to improve the lives of the whole family, a portion of the money should naturally be given to her father, grandparents, and other relatives. Shaner, listen to me. You don't understand human nature. You've always been weak. As long as you give yourself a chance, these people will use all kinds of reasons to force you and threaten you until you're completely eaten. After saying this, Fan Lingshan's mother breathed her last. Back then, Fan Lingshan had actually lied to Chen Guang and changed her mind to marry her to another family. It wasn't her idea at all. It was also her mother's idea. It was just that she felt guilty and didn't want her mother to bear the blame, so she deliberately lied in front of Chen Guang. However, Chen Guang could vaguely guess this. He didn't talk much with Fan Lingshan, but he could tell at a glance that she was an inexperienced girl. How could she go back on her words? Little Shan, you can't do this. When your mother was sick, second aunt was busy at the side. Now, your mother can finally walk on a steady path. You can't just take the 4 million alone. Besides, you haven't even graduated from university. You don't have any social experience. What if you get cheated? This second aunt, whom Fan Lingshan had only seen for the past 2 years, was talking to her. Fan Lingshan vaguely remembered that a year ago, she gave her family a bag of rotten apples. Little Shan, your cousin is getting married soon. We haven't found a house yet. You also know that we don't have a house in the village. How can we get a wife? Your cousin is counting on this for the rest of his life. Auntie, I won't be thick-skinned and ask you for money. I'll write you a note. I'll borrow 200,000, right? It's not that I won't return it. Xiao Shan, I was the one who accompanied you during the surgery. If it wasn't for me, that rich man would definitely renege on his debt. Little Shan, how can you be so selfish? For the past 3 days, similar words had been tossing and turning in Fan Lingshan's ears like a nightmare. Ever since her mother made her will and asked the bank to transfer the 4 million in cash to her name, Fan Lingshan felt that the relatives around her had completely changed. She felt very lost. Deep in her heart, she didn't want to be too selfish, but those were her mother's last words. Now that her mother's body was still warm, no matter how weak she was, she didn't want to easily disobey it. But she had already held on for 3 days, and she felt that she couldn't hold on any longer. As for her father's situation, she was afraid that it was not much better than her. Similarly, there was a large group of people around her father, saying how could he give so much money to a child? As a father, he didn't even care about it. All kinds of aunties had been whispering in Fan Lingshan's father's ears for a long time, and this behavior had completely reached its peak in the past 3 days. Finally, Fan Lingshan's father couldn't sit still anymore. He was persuaded. He felt that everyone was a family, and they should help each other when they were in trouble. He had completely forgotten that when Fan Lingshan's mother was terminally ill, these relatives who spoke better than they sang at this time all hid far away. It wasn't until the matter of the kidney donation was completely settled that these relatives appeared one after another from inexplicable places, looking as if they were treating her well. Xiaoshan, listen to Dad, we can't be ungrateful people. There's so much money, you can't spend it all by yourself. You should take it out and share it with everyone. We're a family, we can't be too selfish. Fan Lingshan was still holding her phone tightly, looking at her father with a dull face. Dad, ungrateful? When Mom was sick, they didn't really help us at all. Mom barely had enough money for the surgery. Didn't you use all the things in the family to get a loan? What did they help us with? Fan Lingshan's father was stunned. It seemed like this was really the case. Xiaoshan, what nonsense are you talking about? Our Fan family doesn't have people like you. Let me tell you, this is illegal. A family's money should be shared among the family. That's right. We can go to court to sue you. You'll go to jail. If you don't settle this matter today, don't even think about going to university. Finally, it seemed like someone couldn't sit still anymore. He slammed the table and stood up. This person's outburst was like the fuse of firecrackers. For a moment, the large morning hall suddenly became noisy. More and more people slammed the table and stood up, pouncing on Fan Lingshan. It was as if Fan Lingshan had really done something that angered the heavens and the people. These relatives that she was familiar with in the past had become demons, ghosts, and man-eating beasts. One by one, they pounced on her, pulling at her clothes and tearing at her hair. She didn't quite understand whether what these people said was true or not. Her mother had left her inheritance, written a will, and her father had also signed it. Why did she have to share it with these relatives that she basically didn't interact with? Am I really breaking the law? It wasn't clear who made the first move, but Fan Lingshan's hair was pulled from behind, and she was thrown to the ground. For a moment, the morning hall was in chaos. Under the illumination of the night lights, faint figures were cast on the white curtain outside the morning hall. Chen Guang, who had just stopped his car, thought that he had walked into the underworld. What was going on? He couldn't help but be angry. Someone came to the morning hall to cause trouble. He had long heard that people were threatened and extorted by gangsters when they were organizing morning halls. But he didn't expect to see it in person today. It was said that the dead were the most important. Were these people looking for death? My arm is starting to ache. My hands are going to be stained with blood. He slammed the car door and rushed over with the flower basket in one hand. He didn't really see what was going on inside, but he shouted, "Everyone stop." Chen Guang's strong voice suppressed the noisy crowd. Many people who were desperately trying to get in shuddered and turned to look at him blankly. Who is this person? Isn't this that rich man who gave Lingshan's mother 4 million? There were still people who remembered Chen Guang, and the eyes of these quick-witted people lit up. Could it be that this rich man also heard that Lingshan's mother had passed away and rushed over to give her money because of her kindness? Indeed, someone in the crowd whispered, "This young man is very generous." Everyone stopped making a fuss. The last time he came to the ward, he gave her 100,000 yuan. This was indeed effective. Immediately, a person who looked like an elder in the crowd tidied up his messy clothes and walked forward with a smile. "This is Mr. Chen? Hello. I've heard a lot about you. I'm Lingshan's uncle." As soon as this person finished speaking, another person rushed over and pushed this uncle away. He reached out to grab Chen Guang's hand. "Hello, Mr. Chen. I'm Lingshan's uncle Fan Jitong." The people who were originally surrounding Fan Lingshan suddenly changed their target and pounced on Chen Guang. Although Fan Lingshan had more money on her, she was still here. If they couldn't reach a deal today, they could continue another day. However, this person was different. He might leave after giving the money, and there wouldn't be many opportunities to talk to him in the future. The last time he just visited the ward, he gave her 100,000 yuan. Now that she was dead, he would have to give her at least 200,000 yuan, right? Chen Guang was at a loss. Why was the situation different from what he had imagined? What happened just now? Where's Fan Lingshan? Chen Guang asked. Before anyone could answer, he saw Fan Lingshan gritting her teeth as she stood up from the ground. Her hair was unkempt and her clothes were tattered. There were a few bloody scratches on her face, and she looked extremely pathetic. Chapter 397. Chen Guang ignored the people who rushed over and furrowed his brows. Excuse me, please. The identity of being rich was indeed useful. Seeing that Chen Guang wasn't too happy, the Fan family's relatives thought it was because there were too many people crowding around and annoying the rich man, so they quickly moved aside. Chen Guang pushed aside the people in front of him and quickly walked over to Fan Lingshan's side. As he passed by Fan Lingshan's father, he acutely realized that the father didn't dare to look him in the eye. Something was wrong. He walked directly in front of the pitiful girl and smiled at her. Then he reached out to help her straighten out her torn clothes. Didn't I already say that if there's anything, you have to tell me? I'm your brother, and I have to help you. In reality, Chen Guang was only 2 years older than Fan Lingshan, but Fan Lingshan raised her head and stared at him. She didn't know why, but even though she hadn't spoken much to this brother before, after seeing his smile, this girl's heart that was about to shatter gradually glued back together. Just by standing next to him and listening to his gentle words, Fan Lingshan's heart gradually became a pillar of support. Yes, she nodded heavily. Chen Guang patted her shoulder and looked at her awkward clothes. He didn't think too much about it and took off his t-shirt to cover her head. His loose t-shirt covered Fan Lingshan's body, and it looked a little comical. As for Chen Guang, he only had a single piece of clothing, and the moment he took it off, his muscles were exposed to the light. In an instant, his scholarly aura disappeared, and he looked like a rude and unreasonable person. It doesn't really fit, so please forgive me. As Chen Guang spoke, he rearranged the Fan mother's memorial table that had fallen to the ground. He then picked up the fruit platter and the incense burner on the ground one by one and arranged them neatly. Finally, he put the flower basket he bought on the memorial table. He reached out and straightened the portrait that had been shaken askew. Then, Chen Guang bowed to the portrait 3 times and said heavily, suddenly hearing this grievous news, this junior Chen Guang is very pained. I hereby swear that from now on, Fan Lingshan is my Chen Guang's sister. I will protect her for a lifetime of happiness. I will not let her suffer in the slightest. From the moment he stood next to Fan Lingshan and took off his clothes for her to the moment he finished speaking, none of the Fan family relatives dared to come up and say anything. The indescribable aura that Chen Guang was forcibly suppressing completely enveloped this bizarre and dazzling morning hall. He understood that from the moment he entered the house until now, he hadn't seen a single relative on Mother Fan's side. They were all on Fan Lingshan's father's side. Although he didn't know the specific reason, it was clear from the noisy scene just now that these damned relatives of Fan Lingshan's father were forcing her to do something. All of the reasons could be summed up in one word: money. Dirty, despicable, and ugly. At first, the Fan family members didn't understand what was going on, but halfway through Chen Guang's words, they sensed that something was wrong. We didn't bully Lingshan. That's right, it's so weird. In the face of money, even a coward could be a little more courageous. Chen Guang didn't pay attention to these people's words. Instead, his gaze focused and became extremely fierce. He shouted, if this oath is violated, this table will be destroyed. As soon as he finished speaking, his hand rose and fell. His right hand fiercely slammed down, and the solid wood table in front of him shattered. After the clamor, the morning hall became deathly silent. These people clearly hadn't seen anyone smash such a large table with a single slap. Chen Guang's face was grave and stern, appearing especially callous. Then he pulled Fan Lingshan outside. If you have anything to say, let's talk outside. It seems like there's no way to have a proper conversation here. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Chen Guang used his left hand to pull Fan Lingshan out of the morning hall step by step. No one dared to stop them, and no one dared to say a word. Why did he pull with his left hand? Because his right hand was in extreme pain. He thought it was a cypress table, but it turned out to be beech. He had been plotted against. The two of them walked out of the morning hall for a long time, before Fan Lingshan finally burst into tears. The suppressed sadness in her chest could be heard. Take me away from here. I don't want to stay here anymore, Fan Lingshan suddenly said. Chen Guang first turned to look at her, then glared at the restless people. The Fan family relatives who had planned to follow didn't dare to move. All right. At that moment, Fan Lingshan's father quickly caught up. Chen Guang originally thought he wanted to keep the two of them, but unexpectedly, he gritted his teeth and said, Mr. Chen, thank you. I know you're good to Lingshan. Take her away. There's a letter here. Her mother asked me to give it to her. When this weak man said these words, there was an inexplicable determination in his eyes. Fan Lingshan looked at her father rather perplexedly and reluctantly. Originally, she thought that if he insisted on keeping her, she might not leave. Fan Lingshan's father waved his hand fiercely. Go. You'll understand once you read the letter. In a few years, if you miss me, come back to see me. Having said this, he turned and returned to the morning hall. The other Fan family relatives seemed to want to say something, but then they looked at the shirtless Chen Guang and thought of the broken table on the ground. In the end, no one dared to follow. Chen Guang drove leisurely back to the county seat, while Fan Lingshan finished reading the concise and comprehensive letter. What does the letter say? Chen Guang felt that there was something wrong with her current state. Fan Lingshan tore up the letter, opened the car window, and scattered the shredded paper outside. She turned her head to look at Chen Guang. Brother, I'm afraid I really won't have a family in the future. On the way, the two of them talked a lot. Chen Guang knew that it was no wonder the Fan family's relatives were so strange, even crazy. It turned out that when her mother married over, she brought her with her. In other words, she wasn't a biological daughter of the Fan family. After her mother passed away, she no longer had any blood relations with the Fan family. It seemed that because her mother gave birth to a daughter out of wedlock, she had a bad relationship with her parents. All these years, her mother had never returned to her parents' home, and usually never mentioned it to her. Perhaps the Fan family's relatives were afraid that sooner or later Fan Lingshan would find out about this, so they just wanted to get the money out as quickly as possible. If it wasn't for Chen Guang's timely appearance, perhaps the Fan family's plan really would have succeeded. To be honest, I'm not really good at comforting people. At a loss for words, Chen Guang felt that if he was in Su Tao's shoes, he would probably go insane if he found out that his father, who had raised him for nearly 2 decades, wasn't his biological father after his mother passed away. Fan Lingshan almost went crazy. She seemed to be talking to herself, but also seemed to be complaining to Chen Guang about something. They really never told me that my father. As she spoke, she fell silent again. Chen Guang didn't say anything to interrupt her. This kind of thing could only rely on her own. After a long time, it wasn't until Chen Guang parked the car in the hotel parking lot that Fan Lingshan finally came back to life. Actually, my mother wasn't such a stingy person. Maybe if these relatives had treated us better when she was sick, she wouldn't have said that to me before she passed away. I was even willing to give them 3 million. No, as long as they could keep the money for me to finish college, I could give them the rest. Fan Lingshan's tone revealed a sense of desolation. Chen Guang didn't quite agree with her point of view. I think that a man who is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Such a big family. Don't look at how much money you have. If everyone really came to take a bite, it might not be enough even if you sold yourself. Chen Guang had only seen similar things in the online news. He didn't expect to actually encounter it himself. The most unpredictable thing was the human heart. Originally, Chen Guang didn't make up his mind to take her away, but since Fan Lingshan really had nothing to do with that family, naturally there was no problem. Unexpectedly, she was even more determined. Not only did she want to leave the family, but she also didn't want to go to school. I want to quit school. She said so. Actually, my college entrance examination score was enough for Gokyo University, but they said that it would be too expensive to study in another province. Southeast Institute of Technology has more financial aid, so they insisted that I apply to Southeast Institute of Technology. I want to change places, change the environment, otherwise they will definitely come to me. She had really been too shocked today. Chen Guang pulled the handbrake with a creak. I already said that I recognize you as my sister. With me around, they can't do anything to you. But you also have to do your own things. This is really too troublesome for you. Chen Guang thought for a moment. What troublesome? It's not like you don't know that going to university is a big deal. Anyway, I have nothing to do, so I just want to get a diploma. In short, you are still in a rush to quit school. If you can, why don't you try to apply for a suspension? It's not easy to get into a university. Look at me, I'm already so rich, but I'm still studying in school. It's a diploma. Although he didn't want to admit it, Chen Guang felt that it was quite good to be a brother. Since he became very rich, he had a completely dispensable attitude towards a bachelor's degree. But when he put on the mentality of a brother to teach others, he felt justified. In the end, Fan Lingshan listened to Chen Guang's suggestion and decided to apply for a leave of absence when school reopens. As for now, Chen Guang decided to bring her along with him and send her back to her hometown after he returned to Dechuan province. In fact, he wanted to go back to his hometown, but his father firmly disagreed. This time, I brought back a cheap daughter for you. You can't not let me go back, right? Hua Ling felt that she was about to collapse. She slept in the middle of the night, but was abruptly woken up from bed. Chen Guang, who said that he was going out to see an old friend, actually brought back a delicate girl. He was even bare-chested. Although you are a little handsome and quite charming, young man, you don't seem to have a good private life, do you? How can you face Teacher Zhua, who flirts with you all day long? Chapter 398. You're really good at picking out people, you know. Hua Ling rubbed her sleepy eyes and took Fan Lingshan into the room. Fan Lingshan looked at Hua Ling in surprise. Is this my sister-in-law? Chen Guang snorted. Sister-in-law, my ass. Big brother's sense of beauty is worlds apart from thick brows and big eyes. This is senior sister Hua Ling, and she's here with me. Sister Hua Ling, stop making wild guesses. This is my sister. Anyway, it's a long story. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Let's get some rest tonight. The next morning, they were woken up by a commotion downstairs. The Fan family finally mustered up their courage to catch up. They finally understood that if Mr. Chen took Fan Lingshan away, the 4 million would be gone forever. So they called their friends and pulled together a team of a few dozen people. They rushed to the county town before dawn. They remembered Chen Guang's license plate number last night, and finally found themselves in the biggest hotel in the county town. Although the hotel had some connections in the underworld, they couldn't do anything when they saw the crowd. The moment Chen Guang opened his eyes, the hotel manager came up to him. Mr. Chen, you should go down and take a look. We don't know what's going on. The people downstairs are going crazy. When Chen Guang returned to the window and looked down, he was also startled by how excited everyone was. They're practically going crazy. Actually, he wanted to keep a low profile on this trip, but it seemed like he couldn't keep a low profile anymore. Most of the people downstairs had seen him at the morning hall last night. Other than these familiar faces, there were also 5 or 6 people in uniforms. Under the temptation of money, the wisdom of the crowd was limitless. Indeed, Mr. Chen, you are a rich man. You seem to be very good at fighting. You might even have a few powerful bodyguards with you. But so what? We have more people. Not only do we have more people, but Fan Lingshan is also a member of the Fan family. How can we just let you take her away? She is a member of the Fan family. The money is our family's money. 4 million. Therefore, not only did they come themselves, but they also reported the case. In fact, strictly speaking, Fan Lingshan's situation was far from serious enough to be reported to the police. However, she was a big family after all, and Lingshan County was only so big. Who didn't have a few friends? With all sorts of nonsense and promises of benefits, it was not difficult to pull a few people from the Lingshan County Police Station to keep up appearances. After looking at it for a few minutes, Chen Guang knitted his brows. This matter has become troublesome. There was a knock on his door. When he opened it, he saw Fan Lingshan and Hua Ling standing outside. Both of them had dark circles under their eyes. It seemed like they had spent the night talking by candlelight. Before Chen Guang could speak, Hua Ling spoke first. Chen Guang, let me tell you. We can't ignore Lingshan's matter. Her relatives are too much. Hua Ling clutched Fan Lingshan's hand tightly as she spoke. Her eyes were filled with pity and heartache. I was the one who held her back when she tried to sneak away. What do you think she's thinking? Let's not talk about the amount of money. This has nothing to do with those aunts and uncles. They're robbing. Lingshan's mother's body hasn't even turned cold yet, and they're robbing her. What right do they have? How can you think of giving them the money? Fan Lingshan didn't dare to look at Chen Guang. She had almost run out just now. Chen Guang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He patted Fan Lingshan's head. What are you doing? Even if the sky falls, I'll be here. All right, stay in the room and don't go out. I'll go down and take a look. Don't be silly again, or I'll really get angry. What should be yours will be yours no matter what. No one can take it away from you. With that, Chen Guang went downstairs without giving Fan Lingshan a chance to speak. Sister Hua Ling, I really don't want the money anymore. Fan Lingshan said as she dragged Hua Ling into the room. The relatives of the Fan family downstairs became excited when they saw Chen Guang go downstairs. Some of the young men even wanted to rush up with sticks in their hands. However, they still kept it to themselves. The scene of Chen Guang shattering a wooden table with a slap was still fresh in their minds. No matter how loud they were with their mouths, it was impossible for them to not feel fearful when it came time for them to go up. It was the uncle from yesterday. He seemed to be the most capable person in the Fan family. Mr. Chen, we didn't want this to happen because you're Shan's benefactor. But you really can't blame us. Shan is our family. How could you just take her away like that? Besides, if it wasn't for Lingshan's mother, your mother would have passed away long ago. You can't be ungrateful. The first uncle said with a smile. However, the fatty beside him wasn't as polite and said with a cold expression. You're Chen Guang, right? If you let Fan Lingshan come downstairs now, we can pretend nothing happened. Otherwise, you'll be suspected of kidnapping. Ignoring the two of them, Chen Guang looked around the crowd and asked, Where's Lingshan's father? Don't talk nonsense. If you don't hand her over, don't even think about walking out the door. A young man jumped out. He was Fan Lingshan's cousin who wanted to get married. Looks like Lingshan's father isn't on the same path as you guys. Chen Guang smiled. I don't want to reason with you, because it's meaningless. You and I both know the reason, but you still came. I underestimated the power of money. Otherwise, I would have left last night. I'm curious. The kidney was donated by Lingshan's mother. What does it have to do with you guys? As for the inheritance, Lingshan's parents had already signed on it. It was fair and legal. Now that Lingshan was an adult and had reached the age of 18, she had absolute control over her own assets. No matter how you look at it, it has nothing to do with you guys. Let's not talk about whether you guys are related to Lingshan by blood. Even if you guys are really her relatives, you don't have the right to say anything, do you? How can this person be so shameless to this extent? Of course, I'm just talking nonsense to you guys. You guys understand the reason and everything. But if you don't make a scene, how can you get money? This is reaping without sowing. You guys don't have any qualms about swallowing your niece's bones without spitting out the skin. Seeing that the fatty was about to speak again, Chen Guang turned his head and glared at him. I don't care how much they promised you. If it was another time and place, I might be willing to use money to resolve this matter. After all, money isn't a problem to me. But now I'm not happy, and I don't want to spend money. So, you can wait to become famous. Come, let's take a picture. When Chen Guang finished speaking, he took out his phone and snapped a few photos of the crowd before him. What are you doing? Give me the phone. The fatty roared, wanting to snatch the phone. Chen Guang raised his leg and kicked him in the chest, sending the fat man flying. Who the F***ck dares to touch me? I have hundreds of millions in assets. And dozens of people are lining up to take the blame for me. I don't go to jail for murder. Who dares to come up? Chen Guang roared. He didn't need to prepare a draft to brag. He really scared the fan family's relatives. Seeing that they were all silent, Chen Guang found it funny. If only money was so useful. It would be a joke to use this to scare people like Su Lijing. But different people in different situations, they all believed it. Don't be afraid. We'll block the door. He can't leave if he doesn't hand her over. I don't believe he dares to drive over our heads. The eldest uncle saw that the situation was not good. They couldn't control the situation with so many people, and no one dared to make a move. He immediately thought of an idea. You guys take your time blocking the door. I'll say it again. Wait to become famous. Chen Guang turned around and returned to the hotel. The boss of the hotel was also someone with connections in Lingshan County. He had already called a dozen burly men to guard the entrance of the hall. The boss also helped Chen Guang take the blame. As the boss of Lingshan County, if something happened to his hotel guest, it must not happen in the hotel. It was a small matter if the hotel's reputation was ruined, but losing face was a big deal. When Chen Guang went upstairs, he was called by the boss who had rushed over after hearing the news. The two had a simple chat. He could find some big shots in Lingshan County to settle the matter, but Chen Guang told him not to be anxious. On the one hand, he owed such a big favor for no reason. On the other hand, he was unfamiliar with this place. After calling people, he still had to settle the matter with money. He was not willing. Chapter 399. Back in the room, Chen Guang turned on the hotel computer and began to write a joke. With the experience of writing Wang Ren's long article as a foundation, Master Guang, a veteran internet celebrity and a newly minted jokester, felt that it was a piece of cake. With thousands of words, he explained everything that had happened to Fan Lingshan from beginning to end. He also added some criticisms of the current society, such as what was wrong with the world, what was wrong with the society, and why human nature had become like this. Finally, he added a few freshly released photos. In the photo was Fan Lingshan's uncle, as well as the uniformed fatty's ferocious face as he tried to snatch the phone. The timing was perfect. It took him less than half an hour to finish writing this long article. He still had to thank the owner of the hotel. No matter how much the Fan family relatives and the uniformed fatty made a ruckus, they knew who the owner of the hotel was. In the end, they did not dare to force their way in. After the previous mindless post, the benevolent are not benevolent, the almighty Superman posted a new Weibo post. Now the number of fans had slowly increased to more than 4.6 million. They immediately sent the news to him. Everyone was looking forward to this guy's new video. He knew how to sharpen a pencil, play the piano, race cars, and play the Dota. Not just in the general sense, but he was so strong that no one dared to challenge him. Many people were wondering what his next Weibo post would be, but they never expected it to be a long article. The title of the long article was The Relatives of Friends of Friends of Friends of Friends. The last sentence of the long article said, "At this very moment, my friend's friend's friend is being blocked by dozens of people in Lingshan County's Xinfeng Hotel. My mother passed away and couldn't mourn, so my father was kicked away by his relatives. I don't know how they reported the case. In short, my friend's friend became a kidnapper for no reason. What do you think? Other people's relatives are so scary." Frankly speaking, no one was very happy or satisfied that the almighty Superman had suddenly posted such a joke. An internet celebrity was about to become a public figure. What should we, the millions of fans, do? This kind of thing happened every day on the internet. Other public intellectuals would repost or write these long articles. Everyone would understand. After all, these people relied on this to make a living. But you're an almighty Superman. How could you do such a vulgar thing? Other than that, without verification, who would know if these things were true or false? Even in the comments, a guest of Xinfeng Hotel replied with a photo, which was taken from the window. It's true. However, there were still quite a number of people who felt that they were rational and smart. They would not be affected by such a low-end rhythm. They had the right to question the authenticity of this long article. The comments posted by the most intense fans could be summarized as follows. Brother Almighty has fallen. It's public knowledge. I've already unfollowed him. My fan has turned into a fan. And my fan has turned into a hater. Out of the 6 million fans, he lost a few thousand of them. Even a living person had its own disadvantages. If he decided to unfollow them, he might not be able to serve all of them well. However, Chen Guang did not comment on it. After all, he had a base of 6 million, so a few thousand was nothing. But no matter what, once this Weibo post was posted, even if its influence couldn't be compared to the previous videos, it still had a lot of influence on the internet. Fan Lingshan's cousin was bored from waiting. He sat down in the middle of the hotel entrance and took out his phone to browse Weibo. Fan Xiaoji, you're still playing with your phone at this time? The young man kicked his uncle. The cousin Fan Xiaoji chuckled. Aren't we just idling around? That Chen guy's car is there, and he can't leave anyway. Uncle, this is called preparing for a protracted war. Wouldn't it be boring sitting here all day? Uncle saw him acting like a hoodlum and did not say much. Instead, he turned to the uniformed fatty beside him and asked, Brother Lu, why don't we just arrest him? Although that Chen Guang kid is quite rich, this is our Lingshang district. Even a powerful dragon cannot suppress a snake in its own territory. Why should we be afraid of him? The uniformed fatty shook his head. 2 years ago, I could have arrested him directly. Now I can't. The internet is too advanced now. If we don't kill him directly, we can't do anything that will give others something to use against us. Once it gets out on the internet, the consequences will be dire. It's a big risk for us to help you today. This fatty was obviously very knowledgeable, but he also had his own considerations. Although they had taken pictures of her, they didn't beat her up, nor did they really arrest her. Fan Lingshan was a member of the Fan family, so it was only right for them to keep her. If it got out, they could say that they were just enforcing the law and making a normal inquiry. At this moment, Fan Xiaoji suddenly stood up and looked at the two of them. His face was ashen. Uncle Captain Lu, it seems the matter has already gotten out on the internet. Ah! Captain Lu took Fan Xiaoji's phone. 5 seconds later he cursed, D*MN. How did it happen so quickly? I have to contact the information department to cover this up. F*CK. I'm dead this time. Fan Xiaoji's face was bitter. One of the pictures that Chen Guang had taken was of Captain Lu, and the other was of him. It had not even been half an hour since that Chen guy said he wanted to make him famous. And now he was really famous. Wait, why are there so many comments on this Weibo? There are already tens of thousands of them? Captain Lu suddenly saw the number of comments and was shocked. His uncle did not know much about the internet, but seeing Fan Xiaoji and Captain Lu's pale faces, he knew that the situation was not good. This was posted by a super verified account. Many celebrities are his fans. Fan Xiaoji was also one of Superman's loyal fans on Weibo. He had been following him since the first video of him sharpening a pencil. How could he not know how powerful this person was? As expected, before Captain Lu could make the call, a call came in. It was from his boss. She scolded him harshly, spitting out a torrent of abuse at the slightest disagreement. Then, she told him to stay where he was. She had to stabilize the emotions of the Fan family. If something went wrong, everyone would be in trouble. After waiting for another 10 minutes, another large group of people came. This time, they were not accomplices of the Fan family's relatives. They were all legitimate public servants. This was called maintaining stability. After a while, the Fan family was escorted back dejectedly. This was called an illegal gathering. Fan Lingshan and Hua Ling were watching from the window of the other room. They were so excited that they jumped 3 feet high. Sister Hua Ling, why do you think this Superman posted this? Fan Lingshan was overjoyed. Hua Ling looked next door. Although she did not understand what was going on, she knew that it must have something to do with Chen Guang. Your brother has a lot of connections. Fan Lingshan was confused. That doesn't make sense. My classmates have been thinking about this person recently. They said that many people are searching for this Superman, but they can't find him. Does brother know him? Of course he knows him. Otherwise, why would he post on Weibo so quickly? As the two were chatting, Chen Guang pushed the door open and came in. He waved his hand. Let's go. Brother, you know Superman? Fan Lingshan asked as she carried her bag. Of course. We're in the same boat. Chen Guang laughed. Fan Lingshan and Hua Ling were shocked. They did not expect him to know him. Really? Of course. Hua Ling chuckled. Can you help me get an autograph from him? I'm a fan of his. Shaking his head, Chen Guang replied. I've asked him some time ago, and he said that his dream is to become a fan maniac. After thinking about it, I feel that it's best for you guys to stay away from him. That person's signature is filled with filth. The team from the east had grown. After nearly 2 hours, the three finally arrived at Ding Lu's hometown. It was Hutto Village, Yanting County, at the end of the mountain road. I heard that Hutto Village only has 3 or 4 students a year. There are even fewer students from key universities like Gokyo University. That's why Ding Lu's dropping out of school was a big deal in the village. It's a small place. If something happens to a family, it'll spread like wildfire in a day or two. Hua Ling said. The three of them could not find a suitable place to park their car in the village. With no other choice, Chen Guang drove the car into the small courtyard of the village government and gave the guard 100 yuan. The guard patted his chest and accepted the job. Along the way, Fan Lingshan was stronger than expected. Although she would stare blankly in the direction of her hometown from time to time, she did not show any signs of sadness or loneliness in front of Chen Guang and Hua Ling. The three of them walked along the mountain road for about half an hour. Hua Ling pointed to the mountain in front of them. It's over there, Xiao Lu's home. Chen Guang looked up. A dilapidated tile-roofed house was located halfway up the mountain. The trees around the tile-roofed house were cut down, making the house look particularly lonely. Don't talk later. Let me do the talking, Hua Ling said. I was here when Xiao Lu was buried. Her parents knew me. Okay, Chen Guang said. Ding Lu's parents were very typical farmers. When Ding Lu entered university in her freshman year, her father went on a long trip with her. Before that incident, this family was considered a distinguished family in Hutto Village. Whenever people in the village talked about Ding Lu, they would give her a thumbs up. Perhaps the higher a person was, the harder they fell. Good news spread far and wide, but bad news spread far and wide. What happened to Ding Lu was a devastating blow to this family. However, when Hua Ling attended the funeral last time, she did not dare to tell the truth. She was afraid that the family would fight Wang Ren to the death. How could these people be a match for Wang Ren? Su Lijing could casually think of a way to put them beyond redemption. When they approached the tile-roofed house, they found that it was empty. The house had become extremely dilapidated in less than a year, and half of the walls had collapsed. The three of them asked a passerby where the Ding family had gone. The passerby said with disdain, "The daughter of the Ding family was so disgraced. She seduced a teacher when she failed her exams. She moved away long ago. If it were me, I wouldn't have the face to stay in the village." Chen Guang was about to lose his temper, but Hua Ling stopped him. The cherry tree grew alone at the back of the yard. Its branches and leaves seemed to have been badly damaged by the naughty children. Every time it bore fruit, it was the time of the poor tree's downfall. The three of them stood under the tree, and they could almost smell the anger and dissatisfaction in their noses. The iron box had been corroded by the humidity underground. It might not be found in another 2 years. When they opened the iron box, a pungent smell came from inside. Inside was an old-fashioned phone with nuaka buttons, a pair of white underwear stained with blood, and a few brown spots, and a letter. It was addressed to Hua Ling Xiaoling. By the time you read this letter, I'll have been dead for a few years. I was scared by Wang Ren. I really didn't think it would be so serious to let someone look at my exam paper. On Saturday, when he asked me to talk to him, I should have realized something was wrong. He asked me to treat him to a meal to suppress the matter. I really thought it was just a meal. I'm ruined. I don't have the face to see Longji. It's my fault. I shouldn't have told Longji about this. I thought he would understand and forgive me. Actually, I should have been like other girls and said that I don't like you anymore. That way maybe we can break up peacefully. I didn't expect this, not even in my dreams. No one understands me. Everyone is blaming me. I can't go back to school, and my family hates me. The world is so big, but I don't know where else I can go. I heard that people who commit suicide will become ghosts. I hope I can become a ghost too. That way, I can go find Wang Ren for revenge. But there are no ghosts in this world. I can't become a ghost. I understand that. Actually, I just feel that there's no meaning in living anymore. Xiaoling, I don't really want you to do anything for me. It was difficult, really difficult. Or perhaps it should be said that it was impossible. Vice Principal Su has talked to me. Many of the high-ranking officials are his students or friends. He also said that if I dare to continue to cause trouble, he will make my 2 brothers who are working outside die on the construction site. All I have to do is pay some money. That's too scary. Don't ruin your life because of me. If you do, I'll feel sorry for you. I just want to leave something behind. But I really don't know who to talk to about this. You're the only one left. I know this will cause a lot of trouble for you. With your personality, you'll feel terrible. Forgive me for being stubborn for the last time. I was wearing this underwear that night. It has my blood and Wang Ren's semen on it. I've been hiding it. There's a recording on my phone. It's also from that night. What if someone wants to deal with Wang Ren in the future? What if someone wants to deal with Su Lijing? If what I left behind can be of even the slightest bit of help. Ding Lu final words. Hua Ling read the letter word by word with tears in her eyes. Ding Lu's will was written very calmly. It was filled with a despairing coldness. She used her own calm strokes to clearly write down how she walked down the path of suicide step by step. There was not a single exclamation mark. It was like she was talking about someone else's story. But every word made the hearts of the people who read and listened to the letter ache. Chen Guang gently closed the metal box. Looking at the 2 girls who were already in tears, he said softly, "We will avenge her." In Chen Guang's 21 years of life, he had never hated someone as much as he did now. Su Lijing's slightly flattering smile that day outside Wang Ren's room appeared in Chen Guang's mind again. But there was only one word that came to mind: cannibalism. Chapter 400. The battery of Nuaji's phone was completely broken. Fortunately, there was nothing wrong with the phone itself. The voice recorder should still be there. Chen Guang and the others returned to Wujing City the next afternoon and settled Fan Lingshan down. Zhuo Jingxi's apartment had completely collapsed. Although Hua Ling had moved out, there was now Fan Lingshan as a tenant. What made Chen Guang even more depressed was that he had originally planned to rent another room in this district to hide his sister. In the end, Zhuo Jingxi's maternal instincts were triggered by Fan Lingshan's misfortune. She refused no matter what and insisted that Fan Lingshan move into her house. Chen Guang did not plan to let anyone else get involved in what happened next. He had Wu Shan's protection. Whether or not he could bring down Su Lijing in one go, he had nothing to fear. But Zhuo Jingxi and the others could not. "What? You want me to go abroad?" Wang Ren, who was lying in the ward, looked at Su Lijing in front of him blankly. "I think something is wrong. You should leave the country as soon as possible." Su Lijing looked a little tired. "I've already arranged the plane ticket and passport for you. You can leave the day after tomorrow." "Auntie, help me persuade uncle. I don't want to go abroad." Wang Ren threw a tantrum on the bed. "I don't understand English at all. Why would I want to go abroad for no reason?" Of course, he did not want to leave. In the eyes of ordinary people, going abroad was a wonderful thing. But Wang Ren did not think so. Why would he want to go to an unfamiliar place? There was also a language barrier. In the country in Sichuan province, everyone had to give face to Su Lijing, his nephew. He would be treated well wherever he went. Even if he did something wrong, there would be people to clean up after him. But once he went abroad, he did not know English and had no friends. Su Lijing's face was no longer useful. To him, it was no different from going to jail. Other than that, he did not do anything while lying on the bed. He could not let go of the fact that he had beaten up Chen Guang so badly. What kind of joke is this? I don't believe that Chen Guang is the descendant of some big shot in the military. Chen Guang's school record is clearly in the academy, and I've seen it a long time ago. His 3 generations had all lived in Lilai County in Great Chuan Province. How could he have any powerful background? In his opinion, Su Lijing's conjecture had no basis at all. Unfortunately, he was unable to convince Su Lijing. Wang Ren felt that his uncle was getting old and had become timid. I've suffered such a huge loss and grievance, yet you don't want to stand up for me. Instead, you want to send me abroad. I absolutely won't agree. If you don't stand up for me, I have my own social connections now. I can only rely on myself. His buddies from back then had already made a name for themselves in the 5 capital underworld. Wang Ren knew that no matter how good Chen Guang was at fighting, there had to be a limit. So he decided to get more people to surround Chen Guang. After all, Chen Guang couldn't possibly overturn the heavens. Xiao Ren, listen to your uncle. Listen to your uncle. No matter what, go abroad and hide for a while. You can come back when the situation is clear. We don't really want you to leave. No one can bear to part with you. But we don't know the attitude of the higher-ups. I'm afraid. Wang Ren's aunt was, of course, his biological mother. Although everyone knew this, Su Lijing didn't allow him to change the way he addressed her for so many years, so he kept calling her that. Wang Ren rolled his eyes. What attitude from the higher-ups? Uncle, who else can there be? Moreover, I didn't do anything extraordinary. The money I took is not even 1% of what most people get. I just fooled around with a few women. What's the big deal? Su Lijing waved his hand impatiently. If the matter doesn't get out, of course it's nothing. But the situation outside is a bit tense. Recently my eyelids have been twitching. It's better to be safe than sorry. If the things you did get out and people make a fuss about it, I'll be in trouble too. Wang Ren still did not believe him. Don't joke around. Uncle, you have to think about your own status. Who dares to mess with you? I don't believe it anyway. You see, I've been injured for the past few days. How can I move around now? What if I become disabled? All right. I won't say any more. Even if you have to be carried on a stretcher the day after tomorrow, you have to be carried on the plane. Su Lijing slammed the table. Uncle, it's not that I want to talk back to you. It's just that I really can't move around now. If I move my body slightly, my spine will hurt like a knife. The doctor said that my spine is cracked. You can't just watch me be a vegetable for the rest of my life, right? Wang Ren looked at Su Lijing. Yes, it's my fault. I deserve it. Who asked me to become someone else's son? I can't cause trouble for you. All right, I got it. I'll go, okay? As he spoke, the loneliness in Wang Ren's voice became stronger. His face also showed a trace of desolation. This was a tried and tested trick. As expected, Auntie. His heart immediately softened. She gripped Wang Ren's hand with extreme grievance, then turned to look at Su Lijing with a tormented expression. Attention. Why don't we wait a few more days? It's fine. The injury on Xiao Ren's back is really too serious. You can't act recklessly. Seeing the mother and son echo each other's words, then looking at the bandage on Wang Ren's head, Su Lijing finally softened. All right. I have to go next week. I'm going to a meeting. Xiao Ren, I'm leaving too. Don't worry too much. It'll be fine after a while. Don't be fooled by your uncle's fierce look. In fact, he has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Originally, he didn't want me to say it. Actually, we've already found you a good investment company and let you be the vice president. You should read some books when you're free. When you come back from abroad, you can be the vice president. After waiting for about an hour, a bald man came to Wang Ren's room. Brother Wang, I've asked someone from the school. That kid came back yesterday. If you think it's suitable, I'll bring 8 or 9 of my best buddies to beat him up tonight. You can decide how you want to beat him up. Breaking his arms and legs is no problem. The people I've found are all capable. The man said with a smile. He didn't take Chen Guang seriously at all. Chao Guangtou, you're a good friend. You know how to stand up for your brother. Wang Ren's mood, which had sunk because of Su Lijing's attitude, gradually became excited again. Brother Wang, I don't like what you're saying. Isn't it all thanks to you that I Chao Guangtou am where I am today? The hardest thing in life is to provide help in times of need. Brother Wang, I'll remember your kindness for the rest of my life. Chao Guangtou rubbed his head and smiled like the Buddha. He was very clear about Wang Ren's background. He knew that no matter what happened outside, As long as he held on to Su Lijing's thigh, he would be able to form a relationship with Su Lijing. If you don't lose the child, you can't catch the wolf. If he helped Wang Ren settle this matter, their relationship would deepen. As long as Su Lijing didn't fall, he Chao Guangtou wouldn't fall. This gamble was worth it. Chen Guang left his car in the parking lot of the digital city and took a taxi to the Huili Peak district on the East 2nd Ring Road. It was Wu Shan's home in Wujing City. After waiting in the district for about an hour, Wu Shan finally arrived around 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. It was time to talk openly. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.